Alrighty. I think we're live now. Yep. We're 10 seconds in. We are live now. Um, sorry, y'all. This doing it on this computer without using StreamYard, just directly live streaming through YouTube is a little different, so I'm still getting used to the controls and everything. But let me know if you guys can hear me, if the audio sounds good, stuff like that. Or if I need to change anything. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, if y'all could let me know if you're hearing me, that okay, cool, awesome. I wasn't sure if I'm just like in the landing page at the beginning, or if people are actually hearing me or what. But all right, so today is going to be the live permaculture Q&A. So as you guys are coming in here, just shoot your questions down in the comment in the chat section, and then we'll get to them as as we progress through these comments and or questions and everything. Any question you can ask, any questions. It can be about homesteading, permaculture, farming, anything like that, or anything else. Really, I'm down to answer any questions to the best of my ability. So just a quick like housekeeping notes and everything. If or this coming here pretty soon, there's going to be a couple of festivals that I'm going to be at, and I do this at every festival that I'm at. I'm out the entire time I'm at the festival. You are free to come up to me, ask me questions, get some answers, whatever you want to do. Yeah. So some of the festivals I'll be at. The next one is going to be the Ruckus, the Caleb House Ruckus, which is a fantastic one. I've never been to that one personally, but I am familiar with the Caleb House crew. There's some awesome people. If you're unfamiliar with them, they actually go, in Oklahoma. They actually go and rescue kids, and instead of just, turning them back into the same system that was abusing them, they provide them permanent, stable housing and everything like that. So awesome group of people. They actually do what you're wanting them to do as far as like actually saving children. There's a bunch of, I think there's there's a handful of employees when it comes to Caleb House. And instead of most of that money going to administration and everything like that, the majority of the money goes into saving kids, building houses for these kids, things like that. So can't wait to see you guys there. I thought the ruck was a race at first. So I kind of was approaching it with that same mindset. Turns out it's not a race. It's just a friendly like 5K that everybody's just, joining in on. And then, so after the Ruckus, I'll be at the Mountain Readiness Festival. That's going to be in North Carolina in May. The Ruckus is in like 2 weeks, I think, but the Mountain Readiness Festival is in May. I think first week of May, if I remember correctly. That's going to be awesome. T also signed me up for Troy's Gate afterwards, which is going to be interesting. It's like a live like reaction test of like how well do you do in like self-defense situations? How well do you react? Do you like what's it called? Like, do you acknowledge or recognize a threat immediately? How long does it take you? How do you recognize to that? But anyway, Troy's Gate is going to be interesting, and then advanced combat pistol class after that the next day. But Mountain Readiness, those guys teaching those classes are going to be at Mountain Readiness. I'll be there talking about permaculture. There's going to be a tree grafting guy there, and if you're trying to make like passive forms of income on your homestead, you should totally get into tree propagation. It's easier than you think, and it's like the profit margins are insane if you do it correctly. So yeah, there's going to be a bunch of other awesome speakers there. Sue LaRue is going to be there. He's going to teach you how to track somebody from somebody who's actually tracked people and everything. Pretty cool. But yeah, so Caleb House, Mountain Readiness, and then Kentucky Sustainable Living. That's going to be like middle of summer in June, July. I think it's June. But those are going to be the festivals that I'm coming to so far this year. Oh, and then also the Heartland, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, Heartland something festival. That's going to be over in Ohio, run by Jeff Smith. Jeff Smith, I've met a few times at KSL, Kentucky Sustainable Living, and he's cool, squared away dude. And I'm excited to do his festival, and it's a pretty unique setting, I think, as far as homesteading goes. Homesteading festivals go. But that being said, remember guys, if you have any questions, leave it down below in the, I guess it's not down below. For me, it's off to the right. Leave it in the live chat section. And we're going to start from the top from what's C4R Home. Hi, William. I live in Hurricane Alley. How can I properly build out my permaculture infrastructure when I have the risk of having intense weather yearly? What do you recommend I think through? And then I'm going to read your other questions at the same time because they're going to kind of work together. I am also in the path of the hurricanes. However, that is not my main problem. My entire acre is nothing but sugar sand. Any compost I can put down immediately gets washed away at the first rain. And do you think adding mushroom infused wood chips will do better and perhaps create enough fungal growth to create a living soil that doesn't just wash through the sand? So, starting off with your hurricane. Now, you are in an acre, so your earthworks aren't going to be too extensive. But the biggest thing to worry about whenever you're in like Hurricane Alley or you have monsoon season or whatever it may be is that you got to like make sure your overflows are overbuilt. They need to be overbuilt as far as like the actual construction of it. So your overflow for a pond, your overflow for a swale, whatever it may be, you got to make sure everything is like overbuilt and like built for to like exceeding the worst case scenario. So like you want to make sure you're able to like enough water is able to flow out of that overflow as quickly as possible without damaging the actual dam wall of, let's say, a pond or a swale or anything like that. So that's step number one: is make sure all of your overflows are like just bulletproof, right? So and then your the compost and the sugar sand and the fungal growth is gonna and the wood chips you were talking about is all gonna kind of work together. So when you're in like soils like sand, something that's difficult to work with or difficult to get microbes actually attached to the sand particles, what you're going to need to do is incorporate biochar into your compost. This is where like biochar thrives. This is the main purpose of biochar. Like the main benefit of biochar is applying it to sandy soils because it allows the organisms to actually it provides a home for organisms. So your organisms will actually attach themselves to the biochar. It's small enough and it has like enough pores in it so where the organisms can attach to the biochar and they can live there. And then they get protected from washing through during those heavy rains. And then they can start gluing themselves to the sand. And then they can start breaking down the sand and the biochar using enzymes, providing whatever the plant needs. And then you're going to be good to go. Once you get that biochar inoculated and inserted into your what's it called, your soils, then you're going to be good to go. Then you're not going to have any issues, and then you can start building the biology in your soil. Best way to apply biochar, in my opinion, is to go ahead and make it and then just apply it to your compost, your finished compost, hopefully like thermophilic made compost. That's going to be the best way to go. If you do if you just apply it directly to your sand, then there's going to be some negative effects for an extended period of time because you have to inoculate the biochar first. So like by inoculating biochar, you're just inserting like the organisms into the biochar and then you're applying it to your soils. If you apply it to your soils first, then it's going to rob any like existing microbes in your soil. And then it's going to do that for like an extended period of time before it becomes any benefit to you. So if you look at like Terra Preta with the Mayans and the Aztecs all used through the like Amazon rainforest, what they would do was like mix it in with a bunch of like decomposing organic matter and animal manure and things like that, and then they would apply it to their soils that way. So it was never applied just straight up and raw in any form. It was always inoculated first and then applied, and then you'll have benefits to it, and then you'll be able to grow pretty well in that sandy soil. Another thing, I don't think you mentioned if there's any slope on your property, but if there is any slope on the property, another thing I would recommend doing with that sandy soil, that sugar sand soil, is to get some plants down that use hair nets that have like hair roots, I should say. So things like palms, those are going to have hair roots. Things like willows are going to have hair roots. A lot of your bamboos are going to have hair roots. And depending on, I'm assuming you probably live somewhere near Florida. And if you live in a subtropical / Mediterranean / tropical environment, just as a broad statement, then you can get some really cool structural clumping bamboo. So if you do go the bamboo route, make sure it's like just clumping because you want bamboo, but your neighbors might not want bamboo. So don't get the running varieties. Just get the clumping varieties, and then you can pick which variety you want based on what you want to use the bamboo for. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see if there are any other. Okay. Okay, so one thing that would be helpful if you guys are asking questions is if you make it all caps, just so I can easily see it. That would be awesome. So this one is from Nancy Congisti. I think I pronounced that right. I think I pronounced that right. She's a Patreon member. She is awesome. She is flying through that PDC. Question: what is the best way to wake up my raised bed next week? The best way to wake it up. So or if your raised beds are in your gardens and your soils are already like inoculated with good biology, then they'll naturally wake up as the rains of spring come in, as the temperatures start warming up and things like that. But if you're wanting to get them like a little bit more active a little bit sooner, I would say it kind of depends on what you're trying to grow. For example, if you're trying to grow, like if you're trying to wake up the soil in your orchard, for example, then I would make like a compost extract, including things that are going to feed fungi well. So things like steel cut oats, for example, would feed fungi well. Kelp, to a certain extent, can feed fungi well. Things like that. Humic acid, if you bought any humic acid, adding that to the soil will definitely wake up some fungi. But if you're in a garden and you're trying to kind of wake up both, then you might want to make like a compost extract and then apply a little bit, a very little bit, because a little goes a long way, of some like blackstrap molasses. That's going to feed both the simple sugars in the blackstrap molasses are going to feed your bacteria, and then the more complex sugars in your blackstrap molasses is going to feed your fungi. You can also do the same thing with honey, but I would say that's a little bit of an extra step. You could also just pee on the beds. Or maybe get your husband or your son or something like that to pee on the beds if that's a little bit easier for him. Or you could just pee in a gallon jug. Like I don't know how women do it, but I've seen women do it. Like I've seen, full jugs. However y'all do it, maybe do that and then dilute it quite a bit. I would dilute it up to like 10 to 20 times and then apply it to your soils. And then that nitrogen input is going to naturally interact with any carbon and start speeding things up and stuff like that. So, but I would say you don't have to worry about waking up your raised beds. You could, and I'm also not sure how much of a benefit you're actually going to get from trying to wake up your raised beds, other than like you've provided some food for your soil organisms and everything. So let's go on to hopefully that answered your question. If you need more detail, just shoot it in the comment section. The next one is from Idri Snorwood 3247. How's it going? What does that say behind you? Oh, this says the Pimpcast. So I'm actually, for those of you guys that don't know, I'm actually farm sitting for my parents here in North Carolina. And right now I'm in the podcast studio. My dad and I do a podcast together called the Permaculture Pimpcast. Don't be offended. Pimp stands for Permaculture is my passion. Yeah, it was a Permaculture Pimp Daddy was actually a name given to him by, I believe, Eric Sider whenever Dad was going through his first permaculture design course. But yeah, Pimp stands for Permaculture is my passion. And it's a blue neon sign that my wife actually ordered for my dad quite a few years ago. This was like near the beginning stages of the Pimpcast. So that's what that says. This one is from Janu5351. Best medium for starting elderberry cuttings in zone 5. So what I recommend doing, in fact, I believe Stefan Subkoviak just came out with a video not too long about talking about like rooting cuttings and everything like that. A lot of people root in sand. A lot of people root in just like regular potting soil. Now, if you're trying to make it yourself, one thing that you can do is just like, there's only 2 seed starting or like potting soil recipes you need to remember. One for starting vegetables and produce and things like that. And then the other one for starting trees. So if you're doing like seeds, like vegetables and all that, you need, 2 parts compost and 1 part sharp sand, which you can get at like any big box hardware store. So 2 parts compost, 1 part sharp sand. And then for trees, it's going to be a 50-50. So it's going to be 1 part compost, 1 part sharp sand. And then you're going to be good to go. That should root them pretty well. A little bonus tip is if you have access to any kind of willow, like if you know of any kind of willows, it doesn't matter what kind of willow, any willow. If you can go find a willow, and then cut the 1 to 2 year growth into 1/2 inch pieces, and then toss it in a bucket, and then fill that bucket with water, like clean water, not like city water or anything like that, but good clean water. Let it sit there for like a week or two, probably closer to 2 weeks. What's left in that bucket, the liquid that's left in that bucket, is going to be the world's best root growth stimulator or stimulant. Jeez, y'all, I promise I can talk. It's gonna be the world's best growth root growth stimulant. Like the commercial manufactured varieties literally work half as well as the willow water does. So that'll definitely get some roots popping for your elderberry. The next question, Idris Snorwood said black ginger. I'm not too familiar. I guess I'm not too familiar with that, but I'm not sure if that's a question. This one is from Area Squared 2458. My yard is squishy in the winter. It is like walking on a waterbed. How can I amend the soil to help it not hold water? So what you need to do there is just increase infiltration in your soil. So I'm guessing, without actually having seen it, I'm guessing there's probably some sort of compaction layer, or you have heavy clay soils, or it's a combination of the two. But the classic answer on this channel is obviously increase the soil biology. That being said, you might have to penetrate past that. What's it called? That compaction layer. So find out how deep your compaction layer it goes. Like basically all you have to do is like take a sharpened metal rod and then push it down. And once it gets to the point where it's like pretty difficult to push, that's where your compaction layer is. And then put your finger down at the soil level, pull out your rod, and then whatever length is below your finger, that's how you know, that's where you know your first heavy compaction layer is going to be. That being said, you can either broad fork past that compaction layer, or you can you could do it like on a larger scale. You could do a yeoman's plow past that compaction layer. But if you penetrate deep enough past that compaction layer, then you're going to be able to infiltrate water a little bit deeper into your property. Also, once you've like if you do a yeoman's plow, it's going to leave these trenches, sorta like very, very narrow trenches. That's going to allow water to infiltrate deeper. If you do a broad fork, the water's just going to be able to seep in a little bit deeper. But every time that water seeps in deeper, it's also bringing biology with it. So the biology will, ride that water and then penetrate deeper. And there's no lower limits to soil. So we can build soil going two directions. We can build soil going up, and then we can also build soil going down. The limitation going down is your first compaction layer over 300 psi. That's the point where roots can't penetrate and nothing's being fed down there. So once you can break past that compaction layer, there's like no lower limits. For example, the raised beds, or not the raised beds, but the in-ground beds at the demonstration site over in Texas, I'm able to dig by hand fairly easily, like in between my elbow and shoulder deep. And all I did there was I tilled it initially, but it was only a couple inches, and it was just enough to shape the beds. I tilled it, and then I immediately applied a clover cover crop, and then the clover did all the work. It wasn't until this spring, or actually it was the winter. It wasn't until it was actually, I think, a week before I came out here to farm sit for my parents, that I applied any kind of soil biology in the form of extracts or soil saviors or anything like that. And it did fantastic. So yeah, I would recommend breaking past that compaction layer and then inoculating with some biology, and then you'll notice that your water is going away a little bit better. You'll have just better water management. So that'll like absorb water during drought conditions, and then it'll wick water and like soak in water like deeper during your rainy conditions and everything. And then depending on what your yard looks like, let's say it's like super shaded. Another thing you could do to kind of increase, the water evaporation is to just allow more sun to make contact with the soil. Let's say you have a yard and it's like heavily treed, right? Like there's a bunch of trees, very little sun hitting the soil. I would go through and like maybe thin some of the trees or thin some of the branches on the trees, and that might help as well. And at any point, if you guys like ask a question and I answer it and it's not quite what you were looking for, just repost it and make whatever adjustments to the questions you need. Let me see if I can find it. Did I just see? Oh, let me see if I can find the next question. Oh man, y'all came in heavy. Oh dang, I got to move faster. Sorry, y'all. So that was that. And then Oklahoma. Yes, the Caleb House Ruckus is in Oklahoma. Does your dad do? Oh, does your dad do the chicken tractor on steroids in the winter? If so, how? No, he does not do the chicken tractor on steroids in the winter. In fact, I don't think he's going to be doing the chicken tractor on steroids anytime soon. Again, the main benefit of the chicken tractor on steroids is that you're producing, like, after your fourth week, you're producing a cubic yard of compost per week after that. So when we first moved here, yeah, we were doing the chicken tractor on steroids because we needed a lot of compost. But now they're in a position where they don't really need as much compost. Like, everything's been inoculated with biology. All the growing areas are kind of squared away and everything. So they don't, like, that's the cool thing about going the soil biology route, y'all, is like, once you get the soil like where you want it, it's a permanent fix as long as you don't create any compaction or anaerobic conditions. If you can avoid those two things, there's only two rules. If you avoid those two things, then you're good to go. Now, what creates anaerobic conditions and compaction? Repeated tilling creates compaction. Not rotating your animals frequently enough can create compaction. Anaerobic conditions. Also on the compaction part, leaving your soil bare is going to create compaction. There's nothing like, soil hates to be naked. So anytime you leave it naked, it's getting direct impact from the rain. It's getting direct impact from the sun, the light from the sun, and it's going to bake and just kind of destroy those organisms on the surface. And then also, not having any plants in place, there's nothing to maintain the soil structure. There's nothing to keep the soil structure. There's nothing there to feed the organisms via exudates or anything like that. So your soil is might be like this fluffy, might be this tall once you fluff it up, but then it's going to slowly compact the longer you leave it naked. So anytime you have to disturb the soil, always plan on seeding immediately after that. So hopefully that answers your question. I kind of forgot what your question. Oh, the chicken tractor on steroids. No, he does not do it during the winter. But we have done it in the winter multiple times here in North Carolina and in Texas. And it doesn't really change much. None of the, operation really changed much. Now, if you're in an area where you get snowpack and you're going to get consistent, like, below freezing temperatures, then I would just put it on pause until the spring. But the chicken tractor on steroids is actually awesome during the winter, especially if it's like cold, because you're flipping compost. That compost is going to be hot. As you're flipping it, you're warming up because you're doing like some physical activity, but also you're warming up because that steam is all just hitting you and it's nice and warm. And then also you can stop the chicken waterers from freezing if you put them on top of the first week compost cage overnight. It'll just stop it from freezing, which is fantastic, especially if you're in the beginning stages of a homestead and you're still like hauling water by hand. You don't have to replace your waterer every night with a thawed waterer because the water never froze because that compost is hot. So next one, this one's from Numachan. There's some Asian characters before that, so I don't know how to pronounce that part. But Caleb House is an amazing ministry doing the Father's work. Amen. Yes, they are. This is for C4R Home. How do I remove the heavy metals being sprayed in the sky? They have been ramping them up, and it's affecting our agriculture tremendously. So, two things. Heavy metals are only bioavailable to your plants once the pH is past 4.5. So it's heavily acidic soils. That's the only time that these heavy metals are going to be bioavailable to your plants and actually accumulate in the fruit. Other than that, they're just all going to be surface level and can be washed off. That being said, they're spraying some pretty unique metals in the sky. We did that soil test, what's it called? We did that soil test review with Dr. Will, where he went and tested 5 different locations after that last ice storm. And there's a ton of stuff in that snow. It's not just like water, right? There should be very few ingredients in snow. And there was a whole laundry list. And that was just the stuff that he was thinking of off the top of his head to test. This wasn't like a, planned out test or anything like that of like, yeah, let's be exhaustive on this. Let's find out everything that's in the snow. It was just like, hey, these are the things I'm going to test for, see if they're present. And everything that he thought of testing for was present. And pretty insane. So soil biology, a lot of the biology within like compost and everything are there to destroy toxins or to lock up toxins. So your regular everyday compost, the stuff you guys make at home, is going to take those toxins and it's going to lock it up in medium and long chain carbonic acids just as a process of decomposition. Now, once you get into those really persist, and then they're also going to adjust the pH. So if you do have acidic pH, get the biology in the soil, and then that biology, the biology, as they're breaking down the organic and inorganic materials within the soil, they're creating enzymes which controls the pH. That's how we get our pH in our soils, is from the biology. They're what determine the pH in your soil, and it's very, very site specific. So you might have like 7.2 on this little crumb right here, and then a crumb right next to it, you might have 6.4, and it's all because it depends on what that organism is trying to get for the plant. That's what enzyme it produces that, can extract it from the inorganic or organic material within the soil. And then, it gets eaten by a predator, it gets pooped out, and then the plant benefits from it. So another thing you could do is buy soil saviors. If you're not good at compost, if you're not good at making compost, or you just like have physical limitations, the only alternative to compost that I recommend is soil saviors. Soil saviors should be linked in the description of this video right here. Now, that being said, once you go to your website, it's gonna look like you're signing up for a ministry. It's not. It's a private membership association. It's the same thing you do. It's the same thing you sign up for whenever you go to a co-op. Only you don't have to pay a fee to go to this co-op. Basically, it's the same thing you would do if you signed up for like a country club. All it is a private membership association. It's nothing sketchy. It's nothing crazy. All it is really is a way to protect themselves. Because if you think of soil saviors, like they're stepping on the toes of big pharma, right? They're stepping on the toes of big oil. They're stepping on the toes of like big ag. Those are guys that are just waiting for the opportunity for a lawsuit, so they can just sue the crap out of soil saviors, sue them forever, and just shut down their website. So a good way to protect yourself. And if you guys are homesteaders or farmers and you're trying to sell your goods, highly recommend going the route of a private membership association. Nithi Bali, Nitibali, she did what's called a food church over in Raleigh, and it's basically the same thing. But it also gives you the ability to sell your products directly to consumers without the worry of being sued. So this whole raw milk scare, you're protected under a PMA. Being able to raise the animal, process the animal, and sell the animal directly to a consumer is all protected under a PMA. It's basically protected as your religious rights, kind of. Same kind of category. You know how they're able to smoke peyote over in like New Mexico? You're doing the same thing, only with food. So highly recommend checking out the PMA, and hopefully that answers your question. Next one. So yeah, real quick on the soil saviors and the heavy metals. Soil saviors has organisms in there that aren't going to pop up in your everyday compost. They're called archaeobacteria or extremophiles, depending on who you're talking to. But their whole sole purpose on Earth is to eat toxins like forever chemicals, dioxins, all that type of stuff. These microbes are just waiting for the opportunity to destroy these toxins, and then they go dormant again. They'll stay dormant until the toxins are present. They wake up, destroy them, and then go dormant again. So that's really one of the main benefits of soil saviors, is that they have these unique organisms that they travel to pretty extreme locations to actually acquire. And then they put it in this product. And then the cool thing about that is that you can actually take that soil saviors, inoculate your compost with it. And as long as you take like a small piece of that original compost and put it in any new compost piles, I'm talking like maybe a quarter of a bucket full, you're always going to keep those organisms, right? So it's like as if you're making vinegar, right? If you're making new vinegar, using the mother of the old vinegar will help make this new vinegar. You're basically doing the same thing. Or if you're doing sourdough, you're taking that sourdough starter, applying it to a new batch of sourdough bread, and then it inoculates, and then you ferment it and all that type of stuff. Same principle. Just make sure you always take a piece of that old compost, put it in your new compost, let it inoculate that, and then you can use the new compost to inoculate new compost, and over again. So that way, like if you do it correctly, you shouldn't have to buy soil saviors like every year. It should last you quite a while as long as you're doing everything correctly. This one's from Janu 5351. Best medium for starting elderberry cuttings in zone 5. I think I already answered that question. Big Daddy Supreme, do you consider elderberry to be a cash crop? Depends. I mean, it can easily be a cash crop, and it can be a cash crop in a few different ways, right? So you have the elderberries themselves, which, kind of limited on their benefits being, just a raw elderberry form. Humans shouldn't eat it. It's high in cyanide. Cool thing about it is that you can feed it directly to chickens, and there's going to be no issues at all with feeding it directly to your chickens. So it could be like a cash crop for your personal homestead, and getting off the feed bill for your chickens. You start growing some of your own feed. But then you get into like the value added products of like doing elderberry syrup or any other kind of like apothecary elderberry products. So there's that. But then there's also the propagation of elderberry that you could get into as well. So you could sell your own elderberry trees, or you could sell the elderberry cuttings. And that's something you could do fairly quickly. You could get into that fairly quickly, because elderberry just grows quickly. It's super easy to propagate. So yeah, it could be a cash crop if you do it well. That being said, there are a lot of people that do elderberry products and stuff. So it's a bit of a saturated market, something to think about. But I'm not saying you can't outcompete the rest of the people in the market. You just got to outcompete. And cool thing about the elderberry market and the overall homesteading market, a lot of people just don't like they just don't. I'm trying to think of a way to say this gently. There's a lot of people that get into like selling goods in the homesteading realm, right? That don't really bring an awesome work ethic with them, right? So you can definitely outcompete some of the other people within this market of the elderberry market, as long as you have like a really good at work ethic and you're able to just, keep at it, right? So that being said, let's move on to the next one. This one is from Idris Snorwood again. How's it going? What does that say? Oh, I answered that. Man, I think my questions or my comments got all mixed up at some point. Okay. Um, this one's from Jeffrey Staniels. Will spraying compost extract on grass, seed, and straw on newly graded red clay help the grass seed take root? Absolutely. The biology is going to be beneficial to any living plant, right? And that includes grasses. So yeah, there are areas at the house where some of the extract gets just over applied or spilled or something like that. Those are always going to be greener pastures or greener sections of the yard. And that being said, you can also like apply it to pastures. Compost extract isn't exclusive to just gardens. You can apply it to pastures. You can apply it to orchards, food forests, your gardens, your in-ground gardens, your raised bed gardens, whatever it may be. It's going to be beneficial to all of that. Now, some plants require different levels of your fungi or bacteria, so you can just adjust accordingly. But it's never going to hurt, right? It's always going to be beneficial as long as you made good quality compost, preferably the thermophilic route, which is just hot. So that way all the ingredients go through this cleansing process where it kills the weed seeds. Once you hit 131 degrees, that's when you start killing weed seeds and you start killing pathogen microbes and stuff like that. Next. Oh, Idris. There we go. I think I've been pronouncing it correctly. Chris says, keep saying my comment is too long. If you do it like two-part back to back, I should be able to piece everything together. This one is from Andy's M07. I have a food forest. You do a consulting for me. You did a consult for me. Did the broad forking cardboard followed by mulch. I now have compacted areas where I haven't planted yet. Is cover crops the answers? Yeah, I would definitely get some sort of roots on the ground, right? In the ground. That's the key. Because once you do any kind of decompaction, you have to make sure it stays uncompacted, but using roots, right? So yeah, just get any kind of roots in the ground, and then you should be good to go. This one's from J Carroll 9058. We have a property with an open area about 2.5 acres in size that was a chip pad for 2 different times. The property was logged. That is 100% decomposing pine wood chips. And then you continued. Let me see where oh my goodness, this thing is messing with me. Oh, uh, there is no soil in that material, strictly the breaking down chips that have become BB-sized granules on the 10-year-old side and a little finer on the 15-year-old side on the top half. And then you continued. Rest of the property is very sandy loam, but is all pine timber. What advice would you give on how to inoculate the beds if we create them, or would you do something totally different? As far as like inoculating it, I would just highly recommend making good quality compost. And then like for most properties that I've consulted for, I can think of one property that I've consulted for that 1 cubic yard would not handle. And that was 1,600 acres, right? It was a 1,600 acre polo plantation. And if, as long as it's like, I would say like 1 cubic yard could easily inoculate a 100 acre farm if done correctly, right? Using compost extracts and everything. So, as far as your location right there, I would take some of that I would definitely take some of that decomposed wood material and apply it to my compost. So guaranteed, like I would start digging, see if you can find any like mycelial activity or like fungi activity. And then I'll take like a couple handfuls of that and put it in my compost, but after it's done heating up. So after it's gone all the through the heat cycles and everything, once it's come down to ambient temperature, then I would inoculate it with that fungi from the wood chips, from the decomposed wood chips, and then you're going to be good to go. The reason for that is during high temperatures, your fungi specifically is going to kind of go dormant. It doesn't like super high temperatures, and your compost can get pretty doggone hot. I mean, it can easily get up to 170 degrees. Not saying that's necessarily good, but it can get there if you have a high amount of bacteria food and bacteria present in your compost. But that's going to be a good way to inoculate your compost with some really cool local fungi and stuff like that. For example, like if it's broken down that much, you can reasonably guess that there's going to be some King Strophoria in there, which is like one of the fastest wood decomposers in North America. So that's going to be awesome. Hopefully that answers your question, buddy. Mountainside with Ken and Amy. How deep does a raised bed need to be for growing potatoes? So there are limits to your raised beds. Let's say this first year you have raw land and you're building raised beds. Don't go any more than 3 feet tall, right? 3 feet, at the point of 3 feet, like that's as tall as you can go before the contact point between the native soil and whatever you filled your raised bed with goes anaerobic. So if you go 4 feet, that contact point is going to go anaerobic, and it's going to be kind of working counterintuitive to you. Now, that being said, once you get your raised bed built and it's inoculated and you get roots established and things like that, you can slowly build up as you go. So first year you start at 3 feet. Let's say second year you do 3.5 feet and then you add soil. Let's say third year you make it up to 4 feet. That's perfectly fine. You just got to build up past that 3 foot point. That being said, like as far as the depth for tomatoes, it just depends if you want a hill or not. If you want a hill, then you can plant it pretty. Yeah, I mean, your raised beds can be pretty doggone shallow. But if you don't want a hill, then like my potatoes, because I don't hill, I plant them probably 12 inches deep. Now it does take a little bit longer to have that green finally penetrate past, and I do recommend sprouting your potatoes beforehand if you're going to do that route. But it's totally achievable, and also make sure you don't have like super heavy clay on top of the potato if you do go that route. Make sure you have some pretty good crumb structure soil on top of that potato if you're going to go that route. But you could always just do like let's say a 12-inch raised bed and then just hill up as you make compost and as the potato starts growing up past that soil surface. Hopefully that answers your question, buddy. What is the next one, Jake? Oh, that's continued. Let's look. This one's from JBFO7WG. Where can I get some nitrogen fixtures? Actually, can I put this up on the screen? Hold on. Let's see if I can. No, it doesn't look like I'll be able to. Where can I get some nitrogen fixtures you love, such as black and honey locusts? Hard to find in Southwest Oregon. So keep in mind that in some states, black locust is illegal to import to. Like it's illegal to like if you were to buy it from an online nursery, there's some states that they can't ship to. Sorry, y'all, I had to burp. There's some states that they can't ship to. Dang, now I got the hiccups. What the heck? That being said, some of the nurseries that I recommend is like Farm Connection. That's just down the road from me right now in North Carolina. That they're going to have black locust and or some nitrogen fixtures that you can buy and have no problem with at all. And I'm sure if you talk to Allison, she might be able to, work you a deal and maybe call these trees something else just in case the postmaster is checking and is like, oh, we don't allow black locust in our state. So that being said, Farm Connection is a good one. Tai Nursery is going to be a good one. They're in Georgia. You're in Oregon. There's a ton of like tree nurseries in Oregon. So I would check. Etsy is another good one. But Etsy, believe it or not, is a good place to buy plants. Definitely check the reviews and see how many sales they've made and stuff like that, just to make sure it's not a scam or you're getting some random seeds or something like that. But Etsy's a good place. Tai Nursery, The Farm Connection. I love Leg Creek Nursery. It's down in Texas. LEGG Creek Nursery. They sell the when they send you a bare root tree, it comes with the biggest root systems I've ever seen on bare root trees. Because typically the nurseries will like trim the roots away quite a bit before sending it, so that way they can fit more trees in a box. Lake Creek is like, screw it, we'll just send another box, and they send some awesome root systems with their trees. Another one is like the classic Stark Bros. You're going to pay a little bit more, but cool thing about it is that you do get a year guarantee. But with a lot of these online nurseries, you typically get a year guarantee with your trees. So hopefully that answers your question. Next one is from, oh man, Diani or Dion E. Parrish 6466. I am butchering some names today. Since your dad isn't doing the chicken tractor on steroids, how is he feeding the chickens? Right now, it's just garden waste, food scraps, and a little bit of chicken feed. Very little bit of chicken feed, and then whatever they find in their fenced in area. There's some pretty active chickens, and they're in a pretty like biologically active area right now where there's a bunch of like grubs, there's down trees, there's decomposing wood. So they got a bunch of insects, grubs, things like that. So hopefully that answers your question. Oh, that's continued. This one's from Andrew Adams. How do I, man, this thing keeps jumping on me. Dang. Oh, Andrew Adams. There we go. How would I clean up a sale fiat on the farm? Not entirely sure what you're asking, buddy. Am I missing something? Let me search engine this real quick. Yeah, I guess I don't really know what you're asking right now. Whenever you say sale fiat, I'm thinking like the car. Um, Yeah, so maybe reword that for me, buddy, so I can understand it. Next one is from Idris Snorwood. I'm in zone 6B 7A. Am I able to grow beneficial medicinal herbs as well as veggies and fruit? Absolutely. Yeah. My parents are in, I believe, 6B right here, and they grow a ton of medicinal, like yarrow, oregano, rosemary, comfrey. I mean, those are some really heavy hitters right there. You should be just fine. I would download the app Gardenate, Garden ATE, all one word, and it takes a lot of the guesswork out of what to plant, when to plant it, what will do well in your area, things like that. You put in your growing zone, and it just gives you like a laundry list of things to plant. Cool thing about the app is that like once you plug it in, you just go to whatever month you're in, which keeps track automatically, and it'll tell you like what seeds to start, what seeds to transplant, and then what to directly sow, how long until it'll be ready. It's an awesome way to plan your garden. I highly recommend that app. I do not make any money off that app, so it's not like it's a sponsored, plug or anything like that. Another one from the same person. Have you heard black ginger? I see they're smaller than other ginger. What would be your tips for a very productive harvest? I don't know much about black ginger. But I would check to see if it'll grow well in your area. Like, what are the soil condition requirements? And then just try to meet the needs with it as best as possible. But again, compost is going to make everything grow pretty doggone well. Yahusha's Kingdom coming. Shalom, me homie. Hope that drive is going well. Let's see. This one is from Chi Chick-U Skincare 4675. How long should I wait to use a portion of my property to grow food that has not ever been used after cover crop has grown? Oh, so you don't have to wait at any length of time after a cover crop. So once I put a cover crop in, depending on the height of the cover crop is going to determine whether or not I keep that cover crop while I'm growing my garden, right? So you could plant it immediately, and you're going to have, some benefits from the cover crop immediately. But your second year is where you really, or a couple of months after planting that cover crop, is where you start really seeing the benefits, because you got to give the microbes time to like reproduce and go and get what the plant needs, and things like that. They all require time, right? So that being said, like the only competition is going to be for sunlight. So if your cover crop is shadow, like overshadowing or like crowding out or just blocking the sun from whatever you're trying to grow. That's when you have some negative effects from the cover crop. But as long as your cover crop is shorter than whatever it is you're trying to grow, then you're not going to have any issues at all. Like clover, there's a lot of clover varieties that are going to be shorter than most garden plants. Like clover is one of my favorites. It's just not super heat tolerant. There's some that are heat tolerant, but at the same time, those same ones are going to be tall. So another way around it is just kind of, clear the immediate area where you're putting in a seed start or a seedling or whatever it may be, and then just let that seedling grow up, and then everything else is catching up around it. So it's always going to be taller than your cover crop. Next one. Spring Flower Dark 2137. What questions do we need to think of before a permaculture consultation with you? So the only thing you need to do in preparation for a permaculture consultation is just come up with like everything you want to achieve on the property. It could be realistic, it could be unrealistic, it could be like super basic and simple, and it could be super complex. Just think of everything you would potentially want to do on the property, and then while I'm there, we'll kind of suss through it and see like, what will work, what won't work. Because sometimes there are some things that you think might not work, and we can kind of figure out a way to make it work and everything. So yeah, the only thing that I need prior to a consultation is a list. And it doesn't have to be like weeks before the consultation. It could be presented once I get there, once I arrive. But the only thing you need to do is kind of really think about it yourself, and then everybody else who's going to be involved with the homestead. You all need to get together and think about it and see what are you really wanting to do with this property? What is your goal for this property? And it doesn't have to be list like I want to grow tomatoes or I want to grow peach trees or anything like that. It's just you have a goal for the property. And if you do want to grow those things, that's perfectly fine. But it could be like one of your goals could be like I want to be able to produce all my own meat, or I want to produce 80% of my diet, things like that. And then we can kind of figure out how to do that. Or I want to do a particular system. I want to do squab. I want to do cows. Like what's the correct way to get into these particular systems? Hopefully it answers your question. Let me see. Where is the next one? Da, 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 da. Okay, I think Idris Snorwood, wouldn't roots for moringa or fruit trees benefit from a real deep, loose soil? Yeah, fruit trees will benefit from like deep, loose soil, but as long as the compaction is under 300 psi, the root is still going to be able to make it, down deeper into that soil. So if you think of trees, like there's a lot of tree diagrams that are pretty inaccurate, right? You're going to have just like either one or a couple of deep taproots that just penetrate straight down, right? But then the rest of the roots are going to kind of go out laterally, right? It's not like a perfect like U shape under the soil or a semicircle or half circle. It's going to go out laterally. So those are your feeders. The ones that are going out laterally, they're feeders, and they're going to be a little bit shallower just to incorporate or just to interact with a little bit more biology versus your taproot, which is going to anchor it. And then also it's like its main source of absorbing water and like soaking up water. So your feeder roots can do that as well, but that's just not their main goal. Their main goal is to acquire like nutrients, and then your taproot is to acquire is to anchor and then get like water up into the tree as well. But yeah, everything is going to benefit from basically like deep, loose soil. Another one said, Wendell McGee said Burnt Ridge Nursery is in Oregon. So that would be a good one. And I would try to get it as close to where you live as possible, just so you know that the trees are adapted to your area. They're adapted to the biology roughly. They're adapted to the climate, things like that. Like if you could get a tree from Texas, right? Texas weather is a lot different than Oregon weather. And shoot, some Oregon weather is a lot different than other Oregon weather. Y'all got, okay, quick story. I was in Oregon outside of Portland for my brother-in-law's wedding, right? And there was one day where we had like, time to just kick it. And I was off doing my own little exploration. There was one compost facility that I wanted to visit and see if they were doing large scale biocomplete compost. They weren't, but they were still making very, very good compost on a large scale. It just wasn't like to the standard of biocomplete or anything. But after that, I just was kind of driving. It was just me by myself. My wife was off on a hike with some of her family members, and I was just going for a drive. I just picked a road and drove straight. And on that road, all within like 45 minutes, I got to say, I went from like flat, arid environment And then I hit like, a little bit wetter forested area, new growth forest, things like that. And then I hit sand dunes, and they came out of freaking nowhere. I didn't even know Oregon had sand dunes in this location. So I hit sand dunes, and then I hit mountains, and then I hit old growth rainforest, like all in the same period of time, like all within 45 minutes. And it was insane. Like as I approached the sand dunes, I'm like, holy crap, this is just a patch of sand dunes. And then like I can see the old growth forest while I'm in the sand dunes. And it was just wild. And it's one of those things that just caught me by complete surprise. I was not expecting this. I was just going for a drive. Like I was just seeing what was in Oregon. I was just going in a straight line. And then once I hit like a certain amount of time, I was just going to turn back around and go back to where we're meeting. But all that to say, buy trees as locally to you as possible. And you'll have better, like, higher survival rates on trees. Um, and then Who's Your Pioneer says, all right, here you go. Aegis Snorwood, I think you're the one that asked the question. Whoever asked the question about being in Oregon and needed black locust, hit up Who's Your Pioneer. Y'all exchange information. She said, or he said, I believe it's a she. It might be a he. Man, sorry, y'all. They said, I will sell all the black locusts you want. Name your price. There you go. All you need is like a couple of pods from black locust, and you probably have all the black locusts you could possibly want. That being said, you can get some cultivated varieties of like thornless black locust or thornless honey locust, where they're not completely thornless. Like they don't have no thorns. The thorns are just going to be like thin and green and flimsy and stuff. So they're not going to like stab you or anything. The next one is Shield Maiden for Christ. How do you deal with slugs in areas where I can't let the ducks forage? Slugs love Oregon sogginess. Crush up some eggshells and make like a little perimeter around your plants, and that's a good way to get rid of slugs. I mean, ducks, yeah, if they're in an area. I mean, the classic permaculture answer to slugs is ducks, but the next best answer is just crush up some eggshells and then put it around your plants. The slugs don't like crossing sharp stuff, like sharp pointy things, so it'll be fine. Aegis Snorwood is downloading now. Next one, Dant ZLRT. What do you recommend I plant for a garden windbreak, zone 8B? A garden windbreak. So windbreaks need to be designed properly, right? So if I wish I had my chalkboard here, I don't, because I could draw this out and show you like how the wind is actually going to operate within a windbreak, right? So if like 30% of the wind actually makes it through the windbreak, so it's not going to block all of the wind if you're using trees, right? And then the other 70% is going to go over the windbreak, and then it's only going to go over for a certain period of time, and it depends on the height of your existing trees, right? And then it's going to drop back down, and it's going to spin, and then it's going to go again, right? So if you're designing a windbreak for your garden, I would, if you're wanting immediately effective, then what I would recommend is just like building a structure. It could be a fence. It could be like it could be a wire fence or a solid fence. The wire fence, you just plant something there that's going to act as a windbreak, so you could cover it with. If you're 8B, you could do some varieties of grapes, or you could do muscadines. I would say you could do hardy kiwi growing on the fence, but kiwis hate high winds. They hate any kind of wind, really. But I would go, if you need it immediately for like a specific garden, then I would just build it in the form of some sort of fence, either a solid fence or a wire fence or a chain link fence, and then you grow something there. And keep in mind, like, it's not going to cover the rest of your garden. Remember, the windbreak is dependent on the height of your windbreak itself. Like the amount of wind and the duration of the windbreak depends on the height of your windbreak, right? So let's say you put up a 6-foot fence, you're going to have to repeat that 6-foot windbreak every 6 feet or so, just to maintain that wind going over, as opposed to just going over for a little bit and then bouncing back. So keep that in mind. That being said, maybe there might be some other alternatives depending on your setup and everything. The next one is from Chris T0 or TO4K4X. 25-foot leaning 3-year bare root pear tree. Can I replant, or will it shock that tree, or coppice pollard it and try pruning it straight to straighten it out? So your pear tree is probably grafted to something, right? It's probably grafted to like another pear rootstock. Most pear trees, most apple trees, a lot of your peach trees, most of your fruit trees, your big like popular fruit trees are going to be grafted to rootstock. So the danger in that is if you coppice it, you might coppice past that graft union, and then you don't have that good fruit production part of the tree left. The benefit of grafting trees is that you have your bottom part, which is your rootstock, right? And then you have your top part, which is your scion. The benefit of grafting is that your rootstock is going to be really well adapted roots for your particular area, or they're going to be really resilient roots, right? The benefit of the scion is that it's going to produce really good tasting fruit, right? So the issue with like doing like true to seed trees and everything is that you potentially have really good roots but bad tasting fruit, or the other way around, you have really bad roots but really good tasting fruit. Cool thing about grafting is that I can take the best roots from this tree and attach it to the best tasting fruit from this tree and then combine them, and then you're going to be good to go. That being said, if it's not, too crazy, I would just leave it leaning. If it seems to be fine and it's not staked, then yeah, I would say it's pretty good to go. No, the reason a lot of people's trees are leaning to begin with is because they do keep it staked for too long, right? So if you keep it staked for too long, then it's going to rely on that stake, and then it's not going to develop strong root systems. So that being said, if it's like if you're just worried about the longevity of the tree, I wouldn't. If it's not staked and it's just leaning like that and it's good to go and it's pretty resilient, then I would just, you got some strong roots in that peach tree or in that pear tree. That being said, if it's still small and you're just dead set on straightening it out, I understand. I used to be an electrician. The electrician in me definitely, wants things plumb and level. But that being said, you could wait till fall, dig it up, straighten it up, and then you should be good to go. And then dig way wider and deeper than you're thinking, just to keep as many roots intact as. Hopefully that answers your question. Next one is from Andrew Adams. Oil salt flat in Wichita Falls. Um, Dude, you're gonna have to ask a more complete question. I don't entirely understand what you mean. Like, what are you trying to achieve on these oil salt flats in Wichita Falls? If you can give me like the conditions and then what you're trying to achieve on it, then I can better answer your question. This one's from Dion Parrish. 6466. I'm just going to call you Dion until you correct me. Sorry. Could you buy a bare root tree, put it somewhere to keep it dormant, then plant it in the fall? Yeah. So you can also just have them ship it to you in the fall too. So if you order fruit trees right now, you can typically, most websites, most bare root nurseries, you can pick when they actually deliver to you. I always have mine delivered during the dormant season. Now it's going to be the dormant season. They're going to ship it during the dormant season of that particular location. So the dormant season in Texas is going to be a little bit different than the dormant season in, let's say, like North Carolina, right? So you might be getting, if you live in North Carolina and you order trees from Texas, you might be receiving those trees in the middle of winter. That being said, middle of winter is still perfectly fine to plant. You're not going to have any issues there as long as your ground isn't like rock solid. But like we've ordered trees online, they come in a box, and then we forget about the trees, and we left it in the box for like a year and then planted the trees and they still survived. So that being said, you could always just put it in a pot if you wanted to, and then just maintain it as like a regular potted tree. And then once the fall hits, once it goes dormant and everything, then you can just plant it as a potted tree. And then you'll still get especially if you use native soil, you'll still get kind of the same benefits of planting a straight up bare root tree. But that being said, you could always just order it and have it delivered in the fall. Next one. Oh, Dan Lowe was saying, I think I got my slug problem under control finally. I've lined my annual garden with eggshells. Not sure if it works or not, but I stayed up on killing them. Yeah, eggshells do work. Let's see. Remember, guys, if you ask any questions, leave it in all caps so I can easily see it. This one's from Agape Field. Good afternoon, William from the Southeast Texas. When you get back to Texas, we need a consultation for our 2.5 acres in the Big Thicket area. Awesome. Yeah, just shoot me an email. I am a little bit behind on emails right now. It's been a little bit hectic lately. Coonies are great, My nectarine is starting to bud out, and I got it last summer from a neighbor for free, but it's in a pot and has been for quite a while. Can I plant in the ground and not hurt it? If it's starting to bud out, I mean, I always try to plant in the dormant season as much as possible. That being said, I planted plenty of times in the middle of spring, at the beginning of spring, in the middle of like the hot summer, things like that. It's just whenever it comes to planting in those periods outside of the dormant season, you're gonna have to baby it a little bit more until you get into that dormant season. So that being said, yeah, you should be able to plant it just fine and not have any issues. Just keep in mind that the growth above is going to be a little bit more than what the roots can handle because it's growing out of order. It should grow roots first and then above the ground. But if you plant it in the spring, what's going to happen is the above ground is going to grow faster than the roots are going to grow. Remember, 70% of the root growth occurs during your dormant season. So the stronger the roots are, the stronger the tree is going to be, and the more the tree is going to have what it needs on demand via the biology. But yeah, right now you should be able to plant it with no issues at all. Just keep in mind you're gonna have to baby it a little bit more than you would if you planted it in the fall. Next one is from Solomon Tiger. I like that name. Is there any benefit to aerating compost tea with a bubbler? So compost tea. There are a lot of bad recipes online for compost tea. That being said, it's not like intentional. It's just they don't have the ability to look at the compost tea underneath the microscope. Once you look at the compost tea underneath the mic, or I'll say like I have never successfully made a batch of compost tea. The difference between compost tea and extract is that extract, I'm extracting the organisms from the compost, suspending it in water, and then applying that water to wherever I'm trying to apply the biology, and it's all in pretty quick succession. Compost tea, I'm taking the biology, I'm stripping it from the compost, I'm suspending it in water, and then I'm adding some sort of food. Depending on what I'm trying to increase is going to determine what kind of food I add. Could be kelp, could be molasses, could be whatever it is. It's just gonna. It could be steel cut oats. It all just depends on what I'm trying to feed. Um, and then I monitor it, allow the organisms to eat that feed, reproduce, and things like that. And then once it hits like peak biology that I'm looking for, then I take that and then I can apply it to whatever I'm trying to grow. Cool. The main difference as far as application when it comes to compost tea versus extract is that tea, I can spray it to the surface of plants, like above ground, I can spray it to the surface of the plants, and the organisms are going to glue themselves to that plant. So they're going to stick to those plants. So if you have any like surface fungi to deal with or like cedar rust or whatever it may be, that's the benefit of it. The downside is it's just very, very difficult. Like in the amount of time it takes for me to take a sample of that compost tea, look at it underneath the microscope and determine whether or not it's good to go or not. In that amount of time, which is fairly quick, my compost tea could go anaerobic. The issue is that like so the food that I use for compost tea isn't necessarily the same food that you would use for compost tea. And what usually happens is that in the amount of time where I'm checking to see the biological levels, the organisms eat too much food, they reproduce too quickly, and then there isn't enough oxygen being produced from the bubbler, and then it goes anaerobic because they ate all the oxygen, they have used up all the oxygen, and then it goes anaerobic, and now it's a negative product for my soils. And that happens very, very quickly. Like y'all, it happens so like within 5 minutes that can happen. And that's kind of the issue with compost teas. And given all that headache, all that effort to make the compost tea, like it just doesn't make it worth it to me. Like the only added benefit is that I can spray it on the surface of plants and then they're going to be covered in good biology. That's the only benefit over an extract. Now, I can still do the same thing with an extract. I just might have to do it like 2 or 3 times before it finally sticks to the surface of these plants. And I'd rather do that than deal with the headache of compost tea. Like a lot of people, like I haven't seen a recipe on YouTube for compost tea that isn't putting up straight up or anaerobic microbes into the soil. Like not one of them have I seen is going to be. And keep in mind, I'm saying that from the standpoint of like let's permanently fix the soil instead of constantly having to do these amendments and additives to the soil year after year. Because once I know the biology is in place, then I don't have to keep adding stuff to the soil. The only thing I'm adding to the soil is seeds and seedlings and things like that, things I want to eat, and cover crops, things like that. That's the only thing I'm adding to the soil. I'm not adding any more fertilizer. I'm not adding any more compost. I'm not adding any more of like fish emulsion and things like that once my soil is fixed and once it's to the level that I want, depending on what I'm trying to grow. That being said, compost teas that you see online, they still do work. They will work for your garden. They will benefit your plants. It's just now it's not going the permanent fix route, and you have to keep doing it year after year after year, or multiple times within a season, because you're bringing the nutrients to the plants as opposed to bringing the organisms responsible for the nutrients to the plants. So hopefully that answered your question. But if you're doing compost tea, yes, you always need a bubbler, and you need a very specific shaped container. It needs to be cone shaped, because if you do like a cylinder, or if you do a box or whatever other shape other than a cone, those corners are going to go anaerobic, and they're going to be counterproductive to what you're trying to do as well. So just stick to compost extracts. They're easier. It's like a self-licking ice cream cone. It's amazing. I just stick to the compost extract route. Hopefully that answered your question, buddy. This one's from That Old Comic Smell 56. So when I read that, the smell of old comics immediately came to the front of my mind. Question: I have an 8-foot tall mulberry, 1 to 2 years old. I need to move. Is there a taproot, and how long should it be? So if you're moving, right, and you're wanting to bring the mulberry with you, what I would do is just take cuttings of that mulberry and then wrap them in a paper towel, put them in the freezer room, and just keep them there until you're ready to root those cuttings and then plant them wherever you're moving to. That being said, 1 to 2 years old, it's 8 feet tall. There is probably a taproot, depending if you planted bare root or if you planted potted. There should be a taproot, and it shouldn't be too deep. I mean, it might be a couple feet at this point, 1 to 2 years, depending on how vigorous the growth was and depending on when you planted it. It might be a couple feet under the surface of the soil. It shouldn't be too deep, though. It's not like mulberry's roots just like, go gangbusters in the soil. They do grow pretty well, but it's not like it's oh snap, my taproot is like 15 feet deep, that I'm not going to be able to harvest all of it. If you went like a couple of feet deep, you should definitely be able to get that taproot. And then whenever you dig it up, you can kind of like shake it out and see exactly how much of that taproot you're able to save. But if the taproot does get cut, it's not the end of the world. There's still a strong chance that the mulberry is going to survive. Next one is from J.R. Linham. You know who you are. One. Do you have any do's or / don'ts for Hugelkultur uses in raised beds and fruit trees? Absolutely. So Hugelkultur, there's a very specific recipe for Hugelkultur, and it was developed and made popular by a guy named Sepp Holzer over in Austria. He lives in the Alps, and the problem that he had was that he had a bunch of decomposing logs that they couldn't go to the mill, couldn't really be used for anything because it was such an heavy decay, right? So what he did was stack them up to about 7 feet tall, oriented it accordingly. I think it was like I think it was angled like northeast southwest, right? And then it was covered in organic matter, and then it was covered in soil, and then it was immediately seeded and planted afterwards. And it was something that he was using like it was just a way for him to use old decomposing logs, right? Since he made that popular, a lot of people have like destroyed that technique and ran with it, right? Like it's a very specific recipe, and it works very well as long as you stick to the recipe that he provided. Now, once you start getting into like putting branches underneath your raised bed and things like that, once you bury wood and it's not fully like decomposed or fully rotten, then it's going to be robbing nitrogen from your soil. If you apply the wood to your surface, it's not robbing nitrogen from the soil, it's taking it from the atmosphere. But as soon as you cover it up with soil and you block off the atmosphere from that decomposing wood or wood that's trying to decompose, then it's going to start robbing nitrogen from the soil, and it's not really going to be beneficial to you very quickly. Now, it's a good, like if you find rotten logs, like fully rotten logs, like falling apart as you pick it up, for sure add that to the bottom of your raised beds. But if you're like cutting up branches and cutting up logs and things like that, and they're still pretty doggone hard, it's not going to be beneficial to your garden. In fact, it's going to be counterproductive to what you're trying to do in the garden. And there's not enough people talking about that part. There's a lot of people who are just showing you like how they make hugelkultur beds, but also don't talk about like how many inputs outside of that that they're having to add to the garden to make up for the nitrogen being depleted from the soil. So keep that in mind. Hugelkultur, I would just stay away from it. Just because there's too many headaches to deal with. Just focus on compost. Y'all, compost is going to work wonders in your garden, on your farm, on your homestead, your orchard, your food forest, your pastures, whatever it may be. Compost is the answer. Stick away from like hugelkultur. Just focus on the biology. Once you get the biology squared away, you realize like most of the headaches, most of the hard, heavy, headaches and stuff like that, just go away. Everything just kind of works together once you start applying biology to your soils and everything. Hopefully, it answers your question, buddy. Let's go on. Yeah, JB says 50 different microclimates in just Southwest Oregon, where our farm is. Yeah, Oregon is wild when it comes to those microclimates. Amy B, when planting my orchard, I've made hugel holes 3 feet wide, 2.5 feet deep, logs slash small branches, twigs, grasses, and then the awful clay mixed with compost. I have apricot trees coming. Is this okay? I mean, kind of perfect timing. I just wouldn't recommend going that route because it's just going to be kind of counterproductive for a good chunk of years before you start getting any kind of benefits from it. And then also you're slowing the decomposition process down by encasing it with soil. Now, also the clay mixed with compost. Compost should always be added to the surface of your soil because that's how nature applies the fertility to the soil. It's always going to be on the surface, right? It's never going to be like the soil is never going to be turned up and then injected into the soil. It's always going to be on the surface of the soil. That's how soil digests additives. That's how it just deals with the inputs and everything. So anytime you want to add compost, like if you're going to plant trees, what I do is plant the tree first, do a thin layer of compost underneath, like within like a 3 foot radius, like a very thin layer. Because the little goes a long way when it comes to compost. Then saturated cardboard, 2 to 3 layers of saturated cardboard, and then my hardwood mulch. And that is a perfect setup for your fruit trees. You have some bulletproof, I almost said fireproof. No, you have some bulletproof trees at that point. If you do exactly what I just said there, you'll have some bulletproof trees. I might do a tree planting video this spring, even though it's the wrong season to do trees. I might do a tree planting video this spring just because this is when everybody's thinking about planting trees. It's the wrong season. It's not the worst season, but it's not the best season, and it's on everybody's mind right now. So when I get back to Texas, I might do a tree planting video. Let's go on to the next one. JBFO7WG, do deer eat black and honey locusts? Yeah, they do. They will girdle some young black and honey locust trees for sure. What keeps them away, though, are the thorns. So the good cure to deer eating your fruit trees or your garden or whatever it may be, my dad makes and sells what's called bone sauce. He's out of stock right now. But if you sign up for their newsletter and their email list, you'll get notified when it's back in stock. And that stuff works wonders. Like there's deer on this property every single night, and not one of them is messing. Even though they're within feet of the food forest and the orchard, not one of them messes with it because of that bone sauce. And it works on, like it was intended for just keeping away deer. But as more people use it, we're getting more stories about more people using it for different things. Like there was a lady in Hawaii who was using it to keep bulls off her trees. People use it to keep rabbits out of their gardens. We did notice something down in the food forest. We had shrews come in and attack some of the trees. Now we noticed the shrews only attacked the trees that did not have bone sauce painted on them. So what I'm thinking it probably happened is that as the rain falls, it kind of washes some of that bone sauce off and soaks into the soil a little bit, and then the shrews are able to smell that, and they're like, I ain't messing with that tree. So, and then the only ones that actually got were the ones that weren't painted with bone sauce, and the only ones we didn't paint with bone sauce were our nitrogen fixtures, the black locust trees. So bone sauce, can do some wonders when it comes to keeping pests off your trees. Danny from Deep South Homestead, he painted some socks with the bone sauce because the squirrels were messing with his fruit trees, and he was out there shooting squirrels every day, trying to save some of his fruit trees. But the squirrels were eating all the fruit and everything, so he painted some socks with the bone sauce, threw the socks up in the tree, and he said it saved, I think it was his peaches or mulberries or something, but it works on squirrels too, apparently. So hopefully that answers your question. Do you have a video on how to build a windbreak? I don't have it on YouTube, but I did go over it on my permaculture design course over on Patreon. If you want, you could you can get in for as little as $5 a month, y'all. That's like one. I don't suggest you support Starbucks, but it's less than one Starbucks coffee per month. You can get in and get access to all the information. That being said, I don't have a video on a windbreak, but I know where I could make one. So I might make that when I get back on how to make windbreaks, like more of an example of how to do windbreaks and things like that. Eagle Lover, Texas. I just received my bare root strawberries in the mail. How long do I soak the roots before planting? I would just do it overnight. So like right now, let's say I got my strawberries in right now, and I wanted to plant them tomorrow. I would just soak them overnight and then plant them tomorrow. And you don't even have to soak them in. You could just plant them and then water them in and be just fine. Aegis Norwood, in pots, is it better to replant before the root system wraps around the pot, even in early stages? What's your ideal repotting methods for root benefits? See, none of my fruit trees stay in pots very long, but there are pots called air pots, right? And it stops the trees from actually wrapping around themselves and kind of strangling themselves. And it has like these holes within the pots. It has these dimples and then it has these protrusions. And each one of those have like and then whenever you're trying to pull the tree out, it actually unclasps and like opens out sideways. But it allows the tree to naturally air prune itself, because anytime the root comes in contact with the air, it's going to just naturally prune itself, and it's going to be the best way to grow like healthy trees in a pot. That being said, as far as repotting goes, you could just like pull it out, and if you see any roots coming in contact with the side of that wall of the pot, just repot it that way. But I also don't keep trees in pots very long. It's a very, very temporary situation for me. Let's go to the next one. Y'all, every time I scroll, it just shoots me down to the bottom and it's super annoying. Bill Zegley's in the house. What's up, Bill? Awesome guy. You see him at every festival. Anybody who's been to a homesteading festival has met Bill Zegley, and everybody loves him. He's awesome. This one is from Sakina Abdul Malik 9298. Can you also take cuttings from peach and pear trees? Absolutely. Most trees you can take cuttings from. I'm trying to think of a tree that you can't take a cutting from. But yeah, most trees, now there's appropriate seasons to be taking cuttings. And keep in mind, your peach and pear trees probably are going to need some sort of rootstock to go along with it. So cool thing about peach rootstock can also be used for like cherries, plums, almonds, and peaches. A lot of the stone fruit varieties. And then pear rootstock, you can sometimes get pear and apple rootstocks to kind of share. Like you can sometimes grow pear trees on apple rootstock, and you can kind of sometimes grow apple trees on pear rootstock. Depends on the rootstock and depends on the tree. If you want more information on grafting, check out Flomaton Famous, Flomaton. It looks like Flomation. I always think Flomation first, but Flomaton Famous. He's an awesome dude. Just a genuinely like nice guy, but he makes all the grafting information just super accessible and very, very easy. Oh, I did forget. I did get an email I did get an email with the question. Let me see. Let me pull, and it came with pictures too. So let me pull those up and let me get it. It was from Sierra Sunshine. Let me pull up these photos so that way I can share it with you guys and you guys can look at what I'm talking about. But it was in regards to she built a like a stormwater catchment pond, right? And she was asking me like what I would do differently and stuff like that, or what adjustments would I would make and things like that. So let's look at it together. Are y'all able to see that? Yeah, you guys are seeing it. Okay, can you see you can see my mouse and everything too. So I'm assuming the inlet of it is over towards this direction right here where my cursor is, right? I'm assuming the inlet is there. So one thing that you could do is plant, like for example, cattails at the inlet, right? Cool thing about cattails is I think every single part of it is edible. People hate them because they do well on the water's edge and they can kind of take over a pond. But how cool is it that food can take over a pond, right? The problem is the solution. But I would plant cattails on the side, on at the inlet part, and then what that's going to do is kind of help filter the water, and it's also going to aerate the water as well, and it's going to help restructure the water at the same time. And then another thing that I would do is just get some like I think you did fantastic on your storm catchment, right? I would just get some plants planted around the sides. I'm assuming you're in the northern hemisphere, right? So what I would do, like this would be an awesome opportunity to plant like late spring frost susceptible plants on the north side. I don't know the orientation of your pond right here, but let's say this bank right here is on the north side of the pond, right? So that's the planting it on the north side still allows the pond access to direct sunlight, right? And that pond is going to be a stable, more stable temperature for a longer period of time. And it's not going to be susceptible to like rapid temperature fluctuations, right? So if we get into, let's say, April, and it's been consistently like 70 degrees during the day and like, let's say 40 to 50 degrees at night, and then bam, you all of a sudden get this like late spring frost where, or even mid-spring frost where it gets like below freezing temperatures at night. Your peach trees who are susceptible to those late spring frosts, if you planted them on the northern side, are going to be protected from those late spring frosts because they're being warmed with that humidity from the pond. And then also if it's like an extended period of frost, then that humidity is going to attach itself to the blossoms. And if you can freeze the blossoms and cover it with ice, then you're not going to have any issues. It's a way to protect your um, what's it called? Your blossoms and everything, and you'll still get fruit sets on it and everything like that. So that's the only adjustments I would make to it. I mean, other than that, you did a fantastic job. I would just add plants. I would add some stuff that's going to feed you, some stuff that's going to filter that water, and then some stuff that is going to benefit from having that body of water during those late spring areas. Another thing that I'll plant there is like some willows, because willow just I can, like I said, mentioned at the beginning of this live stream, willow, you can make the willow water from the willows, which is going to be the world's best root growth stimulant. And if you watered, I mean, everything is going to benefit from it. So I would be on it. If I had easy access to willow, I'd be constantly making willow water and constantly applying it to everything, especially during the dormant season for perennials. Because I know like the stronger the the stronger my roots are on these plants, the more resilient my plant is going to be. Hopefully that answered your question, Sierra. And Calvin Collison 9182. Remember, y'all try to leave your questions in all caps if you could, just so I can easily see it. What is your thoughts and opinions on PNSB being used in the garden? I have heard some good things about it, and I'm considering adding into the compost amendment. What's your thoughts on it? I'm not familiar with PNSB. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it, but I think you're going the right route as far as like compost added or like garden additives and everything. Anything that's like a garden amendment, always add to your compost first, because the compost is going to regulate it and make it bioavailable to your plants. One of the issues with using like synthetic fertilizers and everything and water soluble synthetic fertilizers is we talked about roots earlier, right? We talked about how the feeder roots are on the surface and they reach out, right? And then deep taproot by using that's there to soak up water, right? So the issue with using like water soluble fertilizers is that you're forcing these feeder roots to take up nutrients in ways that they're not designed to do, right? They're not designed to take up nutrients in a liquid form, in an aqueous form. They're designed to take up nutrients from the soil after they've been pooped out of the predator microbe. That's how they take up nutrients. They don't take it up in a water soluble form. So if you're forcing it, you might be forcing it to take up stuff that it doesn't need or it already has enough of or whatever it may be. So by adding your garden amendments to your compost first, you're always regulating that, right? You're always going to make sure that whatever you're adding is going to be beneficial to the plant at the perfect time when the plant and the microbes deem it necessary. So yeah, I think that's a good route. I'm not sure what PNSB is, but one thing that I would check is, are there any preservatives added to it? There's a lot of garden amendments that have preservatives added to it. And what do preservatives do? Inhibit bacteria growth, which isn't beneficial to the garden. Um, let's go on to the next one. Rooted life home. William, is it best to out apple and peach trees south side facing north or north facing south? I can't put them in east. I'm not entirely sure what you're asking. South side facing north, or I mean the tree, if I plant a tree, I guess the tree's facing all directions, right? Yeah, maybe if you can reword your question to where I can understand it, then I will definitely get to it. Duh, 1723. I tried to compost it and it smelled up my garden and my neighbor's yards. Okay, so there wasn't really a question with it, but on your compost, if your compost stinks, you need to add carbon to it. The only time like compost gets really, really funky, like I've put dead animals in the center of compost piles and never smelled it because there was enough carbon to interact with that high nitrogen input. So if your compost is like slimy and it's like perpetually wet and you pick it up and you squeeze it and there's just a stream of water going down, it's too wet, it's anaerobic, and you need to add some carbon. The reason you need to add carbon is because you have too much nitrogen for your compost pile, but also it's going to help like open up and create pockets of air within your compost. So if your compost stinks, always add it to, always add carbon to it and then flip it as well to introduce some more air to the compost pile. Um, where is the next one? Do, 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 do. Oh yeah, Doug commented later. Compost smells like poop. Be careful. Not if you do it correctly. And I have a bunch of videos on how to make compost piles, like how to make compost. And I'm about to make some more videos on how to make compost. I have like a 2-ingredient compost recipe. I have a 3-ingredient compost recipe. I do the 10 bucket method. I might do the Johnson Sue this year just to experiment with it. I've never done it myself before. I know some people that I trust that have done it, and they've given me some pretty awesome reviews and looked at it under the microscope, and it's pretty awesome compost. Doesn't require any flips, but yeah, none of your compost piles should stink. If you did everything correctly, none of them should stink. For you, I would recommend doing the 10 bucket compost method or the 30 bucket compost method. And it takes all the guesswork out of making compost, right? It's exact measurements of exact ingredients. It takes out all the guesswork, exact moisture content. It's the best foolproof method for making compost. Um, Chris says lots of YouTubers praise Hugelkultur for cheap ways to fill the bottom of your raised beds. Yeah, I mean it is a cheap way. It's just for me, it's not worth the headache that I'm gonna have to deal with. Or yeah, there's just better routes for me to go than going with the Hugelkultur route. Like I recently did a video. It was still winter. I want to say it was in January. I recently did a video on how to build raised beds on the cheap. And you can even go cheaper than what I did, because what I did was like something that's going to be available to everybody. Because not everybody has the ability to have like a landscape, like a mulch yard deliver soil. Not everybody has the ability to have like a truck bed filled up with soil or anything like that. So I did the bagged soil route, bought the cheapest possible soil, and then inoculated it with good biology. Okay, so here's this. Instead of filling the raised beds with broken down or like wood, what I would do is instead fill the bottom of the raised beds with a bunch of paper products, either like packing paper or cardboard, like 2 to 3. I would go the corrugated cardboard route, and then do like a bunch of saturated layers of just cardboard, and that's going to be way more beneficial than your wood is going to be. Also, as soon as you put cardboard on the ground, worms start showing up. They're like, oh, cool, little worm superhighway, awesome. Yeah, and I know, I understand, and keep in mind, y'all, like you gotta I understand I'm on YouTube right now. I understand I put content out on YouTube, but always be careful where you're getting your information from YouTube. Because keep in mind, like, there's a lot of, I don't make my money from YouTube, right? I make my money from consultations. So that requires me to put out good quality information, right? There's a lot of people who make their money from YouTube. So they're not so worried about the good quality information as much as they are worried about um like viral information or viral content or like high view retention and stuff like that. That's what their main goal is, because a lot of the homesteader YouTubers make their money from YouTube. Like they're dependent on getting that YouTube check. They need to keep coming out with like good click worthy content and stuff that's going to make other people feel good. That's not where I make my money. I make my money from consultations. Like YouTube pays shockingly little. On average, I probably get paid. It's the thing that I put the most time and effort into, and is what pays me the least directly. I think my average like monthly payment from YouTube is like somewhere between 400 to 500 bucks. And that's like putting out typically average schedule for me is like putting out a video every other day, plus the shorts that I do and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's just keep in mind, be cautious of where you get your information from on YouTube. I'm not saying that these people don't have good information, but just keep in mind, like, it's not always going to be good information with the intent of uh, giving good information. I hope I'm wording this correctly. I'm not trying to talk crap on some of these guys. I'm just saying that there's a difference between YouTube channels and stuff like that. Like a lot of people. Oh, and then another thing with the YouTube channels is there's a lot of egos involved, right? Like there's very few of them will admit mistakes or hardships. Like there are some YouTube channels that will go a particular route and then never show you like what went wrong with that. So just keep that in mind, y'all. My goal is to look. I have a daughter, right? I need as much of this community to be built up as possible by the time she's an adult, right? Because right now, as we're looking, the world's pretty poopy. I almost said some other words, but it's pretty crappy right now. We're not leaving much for our children to inherit. So it benefits my daughter none to put out bad information, right? I want you guys to succeed as much as possible. I want as many people as possible growing as much of their own food as possible, building these communities as much as possible by the time she's an adult. So that way she ain't got to deal with the same crap we're dealing with right now of not being able to get clean food at the grocery store or being sued for like that one Amish dude, I think he was up in Virginia, had the like all right, I'm gonna derail this podcast. All I'm trying to say is I'm trying to give you guys good information. It's in the best interest of my daughter to do so. Yeah, trying not to. This is a live stream. Editing isn't available, and I ain't trying to get kicked off and not be able to answer you guys' questions. I'm still technically in timeout from the last strike that I got on YouTube from a live stream, talking about certain elements on the periodic table that could potentially cure certain aspects of like common illnesses that people have. Believe it or not, that got me a strike on YouTube. I had to go through their re-education courses and stuff like that, and it's still counted as a strike on my channel. So basically, if I get another strike, they're going to take the YouTube channel down. That being said, what is next? From Sally Foster 6156. I grew a thick cover crop of vetch, peas, oats, and mustard, and plan to plant green bean towels and other seeds. What do I do after mowing the cover crop and let it wilt? Newbie here. So that's it. That's all you have to do. So if your cover crop is taller than your whatever you're trying to grow as your like food crop and everything, you just need to make sure it's going to be shorter. So that's called terminating your cover crop. If you looked up, like if you search engined how to terminate my cover crops, they're going to show you a bunch of different ways. You could mow, you could crimp, which is basically like you're just folding over the stalks and kind of breaking the stalks and everything. It all kind of depends. I would go with the mowing route as opposed to the crimping route. And everything that I mowed, I would try to keep on the bed as much as possible and treat it as like a green mulch. And if you're going to do that route, I would mow before seed heads are produced. Otherwise, you might just be seeding your garden with all that cover crop again, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You just got to now make sure your plant isn't going to be the one you're trying to grow isn't going to be like uh covered up with your cover crop and everything. So yeah, just depending, because I can't see your garden right now, I would search engine like how to terminate cover crops, look at the different options and see what applies best to your situation. um who's next? uh Williams Egley says dry as anything but from shredded cardboard, wood chips, hay, straw. Yup. um oh dang, it shot me down to the bottom again. Oh, thank you for the super chat. This is from Kathy and Gary. Can soil savers correct pasture pH? Yes. So again, the organisms are completely in control of the pH, right? So yeah, it can totally correct your pH, and it's going to be there as long as you don't create any compaction and or anaerobic conditions. So if a pasture, if you're having animals graze that pasture, what it's going to require for it to be a permanent fix is just proper rotation with your animals, right? So just make sure that they're moving frequently, that you're mimicking either the Sahara Desert with the grazing animals there, or what North America used to be, where you had the buffalo go through first, and they were constantly moving forward. You had the buffalo going through first, and it would be a heavy impact and then a long rest period, and that's a very basic grazing pattern. There's a bunch of different grazing patterns. If you're unfamiliar with how to graze, like rotationally graze, couple of people I would check out. First one, Greg Judy. Another one, Joel Salatin. And then another one, Jim Garish. Excuse me. Now, Jim Garish is going to be a little bit more advanced, right? Because your speed of grazing depends on the growth of the grass. So I wouldn't necessarily start out with him, but he has a book called Kick the Hay Habit, and it's a way to graze your animals, stockpiling forage as opposed to buying hay or cutting hay or anything like that. You're just stockpiling forage in the actual pastures itself, and you spend all year basically managing the grass, so you do have that stockpiled grass or in your pastures. So yeah, like it is a permanent fix as long as you use proper methods and everything. That being said, you could just stick to the methods that you're already doing and then just keep applying soil saviors and have still pretty good results from that. All right, let me try to get back to where I was. Because like I said, every time I scroll the chat, it shoots me down to the bottom, which is super annoying. Okay, I'm caught back up now. Nancy Kungisti, consider joining. $5 is nothing for the education you will receive. Go for it. Oh, thank you so much, Nancy. I appreciate it. Rooted Life Home. Help. Voles are everywhere. I've tried everything and can't seem to kill them. This new 2-acre property is overrun. Just moved here to Tennessee from Texas. Oh, man, I'm a little jealous of you, dude. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Try to leave that slave state, go to a free state like Tennessee. And it's bad. They are everywhere. Any suggestions? So for voles, like I mentioned earlier with the bone sauce, I would buy. Now you can make bone sauce too, right? My dad didn't invent bone sauce. What he did was improved the recipe and came up with his own specific recipe. But once again, Sepp Holzer is the one that made bone sauce popular and known to a lot of people. So I would either buy some bone sauce from my dad if you sign up for their newsletter. For those of you guys that don't know, my dad is over at Permapastures Farm. That's it. That's their YouTube channel. It does surprise me every single time somebody's watching my channel has never heard of my parents, because their channel is far bigger and has been around a lot longer than mine has. But yeah, he makes bone sauce. Check out Permapastures Farm. Sign up for their email newsletter, and then you should receive an update whenever it's back in stock and everything. Or you could try to make it yourself. It's not too terribly difficult. Well, no, it is actually kind of difficult. It's still worth a shot. Just keep in mind you might have a couple of iterations. And another thing about bone sauce, that stuff lasts 25 years as long as you apply it to a wooden surface, which is insane. Now, if you apply it to plastic or metal or anything like that, it will eventually just wash off, but it'll still last a couple years. I knew a guy who applied it to VCR tape to keep the deer out of his like larger scale corn rows and everything like that. Not in the hair corn rows, but like actual rows of corn. Um, but yeah, Jojo Jump. I am looking for options that I can grow for chicken feed. Any ideas? So that cover crop from Sally Foster, all those things are going to be edible to your chickens and they're going to do very, very well. So the thick cover crop of vetch, peas, oats, mustards, things like that. Sorghum, it's going to provide a millet. The seed heads from the sorghum is going to provide a millet. Comfrey is another one. Like you could easily grow everything that your chickens need. Just in a garden patch and stuff like that. So yeah, just look up I there's one lady in particular on YouTube that I'm thinking of. Can't remember her channel name, but if you did like if you searched how to grow all of my chicken feed, then you should get it's one of the more popular videos. It's a lady, if I'm remembering the thumbnail correctly, it's like a lady with some chickens, and then you're looking at the crop that she grew for her chickens. And it's going to be like a mix of things. It's not going to just be one crop of one thing. It's going to be like a mix of things. But depending on how many chickens you do, it's entirely achievable. Um, William Zegley said, "Word, William permaculture class is useful, and for $5 a month, you can get so much info. I highly recommend it." Thank you guys so much. Also, the Patreon, that's where the permaculture design course is. There's a couple of options. You can get in for $5 a month and get all the information that I put out there, right? There's no exclusive information on any of it. But in the other tiers, you have options of like becoming a certified consultant, right? The whole purpose of me doing this course was being fed up with a lot of the people that are parading themselves as consultants that have no experience. They're giving bad advice and they're giving permaculture a bad name. Greg Judy actually experienced a pretty bad permaculture consultant. For example, the permaculture guy was like, "Yeah, we need to put swales in your pasture," but Ned left no access points for his cows to go from paddock to paddock. Like the swales completely bisected the pasture. That's a failure when it comes to permaculture, but that's also what experience teaches you. And that's what's lacking in the permaculture consultant world. A lot of people who take their first PDC, the teachers of that PDC tell them immediately to go now, okay, now go teach people. Even though they're brand new to the subject, they don't have much of experience for the most part. They're going out there and they're just giving kind of bad advice. My whole goal is to produce like vetted experience consultants that I know are going to give good advice. That was the whole point. Anyway, before I got on that diatribe, all I'm saying with the Patreon is that you get all of my YouTube videos as well. I will have some products for sale as soon as I get back to Texas. Patreon will also get first dibs on that as well. And then given some of the products, I don't know that they're ever going to make it to the public, to be honest. But all that being said, let's move on to the next one. Kathy and Gary, can soil savers get the pH corrected on our pasture? Oh, yeah. It can get the pH corrected on your pastures and gardens. And it's permanent as long as you don't create compaction or anaerobic conditions. And then also said how many applications. Kind of depends on the size of the acreage. But if you got the 1 to 5 acre box, I would apply it. Maybe I would try to shoot for like 2 to 3 times in the spring, right before rain events is what I would shoot for. And that's a good general rule for soil saviors, compost extract. And all that does is make sure that the organisms don't dry out as soon as after you get done applying them. For example, if you did it in August in East Texas and you applied it and you didn't water afterwards, a lot of those organisms are going to die just from dehydration and everything. And if you think of it as like a military invasion, right? First wave, a lot of them die, but you got a couple left. Second wave, you're establishing a foothold. Third wave or third application, you conquered the area. So if you think of it as like a military invasion, applying it in smaller waves is going to be beneficial than just one big dose and that's it. So a lot of it depends on like your application timing and method. So you're going to have better results doing the 2 to 3 applications right before rain events in the spring than you would one big application in August. But you're still going to have, they are extremophiles. So they are built for like very, very extreme conditions. So they would still be beneficial in August. It's just you're going to have a higher like death rates. Let's look at the next one. Coonies are great. What is your opinion of grafting fruit tree cuttings to Bradford pear rootstock? I think that's a fantastic idea. I did a consultation for, actually, this has popped up on a few consultations, but one of them was in South Carolina. Another one was in Texas. It kind of pops up pretty frequently. But all right, we know Bradford pears are doing well, right? They grow well in the areas that they're growing, right? They grow quickly. They're typically pretty big, things like that. So we know that those roots do well. Why not just like get rid of the nasty part, which is the part that smells like, rotten corpses and everything like that, and replace it with something that produces like actually edible fruit? I think that's a fantastic idea of grafting pear tree cuttings to Bradford pear trees. And then another thing that would be super cool is if you did a bunch, like each branch that you grafted to, you did a different pear variety. So you got like moon glow pears over here, you got like Japanese pears over here, you got like just like a whole variety of pears on the same tree. Like I think they call them fruit salad trees, but that would be really cool. Um, Next one. Wu Tang, Kenneth Sword. I found some comfrey cuttings that I neglected to plant a year ago. Do you have a method that can increase the chances of them taking root and grow? Appreciate it, SGB. Man, it's been a while since I've seen something from Kenneth Sword. What's going on, Wu Tang? Um, I for those of you guys that don't know, I call him Kenneth Wu Tang because Kenneth Sword, he just sounds like a Wu Tang clan member. I don't know why. I think he'd be an awesome addition to the Wu Tang clan. In fact, I heard they just had an opening. There you go. Um, Man, I got sidetracked on that. I forgot what your question was. So increasing chances of getting your comfrey to sprout. So uh, I've done the same exact thing that you've done. Like, forgot about root cuttings in the fridge, found them a year later, and then all I did was just plant them normally, and they still did pretty well. One thing you could do is just like go dig up some native soil that you have, kind of sift it, make sure there's no huge clumps, put it in pots, and then put your comfrey cuttings 2 inches deep horizontally in those pots, and then put them underneath grow lights, and then water frequently and things like that. That's going to increase the chances of them, growing and everything. But you'll still have like some pretty, as long as they're not like falling apart on you, as long as they're not like rotten and everything, you're still going to have some pretty awesome germination rates and everything. So I wouldn't stress too much about it. It'll still probably work out. Um, in April, it can fill to the logs on the top left. Oh, talking about the pond and everything. Uh, oh, okay. Is Linden Lady the same as Sierra? Oh, okay. So, all right. Yeah, awesome. That works out. Amy B, pond question. I have a 50-plus-year-old pond with about 2 feet of muck from the leaf drop. Aside from dredging, what are other ideas to reduce muck? I've been using enzymatic pellets packets from a pond store. Huh. Other ways to reduce muck. I mean, it's kind of just the natural process of a pond, right? Like the only thing that I could think of is maybe just clearing trees away from the pond, but like that stuff is gold. I would I would put on some waders or just, skinny dip in that pond and get that black gold up out of there and then add it to my compost because that's a bunch of nutrients that are just waiting to be aerobic so they can be beneficial to the plants and everything. That stuff is like black gold down there. So the correct way to use the dredged material, what I'm saying is that I would recommend dredging, either with like a machine or with you just getting in there and like digging up stuff from the bottom of the pond. Um, but what's the proper way to use that is you got to make it aerobic first. So right now, it being under the water, it's super anaerobic, but there's a ton of fertility. There's a bunch of potential fertility down in there. So muck it out, get it in some sort of container, and then start adding it to your compost to become aerobic. And then you'll notice an increased amount of gels in your compost, which are awesome because they're like pretty drought proof. They're really good at retaining water, and then also wicking excess water. And then you'll have just like a bunch of ready to go nutrients that are going to be easily digestible by your very, very basic biology, such as bacteria. Um, Yeah, it just needs to be unlocked aerobically first, but that's what I would recommend doing. And then Linden Lady. Oh, the swales were to the east side. Okay, of that pond picture that I showed earlier. Um, okay, I think I almost caught up. Remember to leave your questions in all caps, please, just so I can easily see it. Agape Field. Is there a nursery in Texas that has bare fruit trees? We got mayhaws and pawpaws from mostly native nursery in Warren, Texas. We have lots of willow and will share. Oh, yeah, y'all hit up Agape Field for the willow and everything. So what I would do, Leg Creek Nursery is in Texas. I believe they're in that like Austin, College Station, Houston triangle. I think they're somewhere around there. But Leg Creek Nursery is amazing. It's my favorite online nursery. Legg Creek Nursery. Leg with two G's. Um, uh, Commodity Beer Actual. Question. I am visiting a future property. What is the best way to improve clay soil if I have 2 days to set it and forget it until I return later? Cover crop. Cover crop is the best possible thing you could do for clay soil. So I was able to switch clay, like heavy Play-Doh clay soil, into like awesome crumb structure in just a matter of like a couple of months. And all I did was till up, because it was the garden bed and I wanted to shape the beds and everything. They were in ground, but they were still slightly raised, just like mounds, basically. What I did was go through, till everything up, not super deep, and then not super like fine. It was just enough to shape it. And then what I did is immediately seed. I think I did red and crimson clover. Immediately seeded that afterwards, and then you will get some awesome crumb structure out of that. So that's what I would do. Larger scale, I would probably go with a cheaper seed. Or another thing you could do is roll out a bunch of hay. It kind of depends on what you plan on doing with that particular piece of property. But if you're trying to graze that area, then what I would do is roll out a bunch of hay, like get a round bale of hay and then just roll it out and then call it good. If it's going to be like a future garden area, then I would till one day, and you get to get it all done in one day, really. Till, seed, and then scatter mulch on top with like some straw. Scatter mulching is just very light mulching, so you can still see the surface of the soil underneath your mulch. And that's what I would do, and you're gonna have some awesome effects after that. 1723, can you start selling wild edible weed seeds? I think drought resistant container gardens are the next big trend. It's hard to find weeds for sale. Yep, actually, okay. So kind of breaking the or unleashing the secret of the products that I'm going to be selling. So when I do these videos on specific plants, for example, moringa, I have one about Good King Henry that's going to be coming before too long. When I do these videos, the most common question that I get both in the comment section and then also in emails is, hey, where do I source these guys from? Right? Like, is this a reputable dealer? Like, where can I source these seeds from? So what I did was source the seeds, and I'm going to be selling the seeds to you guys. I got Good King Henry, I got moringa, I got a couple others in the works. But the stuff that I've like tested germination rates, tested germination methods, things like that. But and also there's a chance of like ordering seeds online and then it turns out to be something completely different than what you ordered from. And I understand that hesitation and that that worry and everything like that. So I'm going to be selling seeds. That's really what I'm going to be doing. Um, but yeah, I will start selling basically weed seeds. Dang, it shot me down again. All right, next one. William Zegley said some stuff I can't. He said, William can't say it, but there is a huge difference between teaching and clickbait. There are many out there that put out thumbnails and BS. I appreciate you, buddy. And Zegley, he always comes in clutch when it comes to the live stream on the Pimpcast and everything, because we're heavily censored and everything. He always says in the comments what we can't say on the podcast. So there's a huge benefit in being able to watch the podcast or the Pimpcast live on YouTube, because you get that added commentary and that added benefit that you don't necessarily get on the audio platforms and everything. to the point where we can't even like. Yep. Yeah. I can't even read this one comment that he said because it's the actual element that's used to cure certain things. Um, let's go on to the next one. Hold on one second, y'all. I gotta sneeze. Never mind. I guess I didn't have to sneeze. It that was clickbait, I guess. Um, 1723. The blue ink prints on cardboard contain lead, so remove the sections with blue ink. Don't even worry about that, dude. The only thing I removed from cardboard, like the cardboard stuff, is just the plastic tape. But remember, lead is only bioavailable to my plants if my pH is above four, is at 4.5 or above. So it's going to just get, as it gets digested by the soil, it's just going to get turned in and locked into medium and long chain carbonic acids. That's all it's going to do. So I wouldn't stress about that. And also, a lot of the inks now are all soy based, so that just means it's going to be easily digestible. So yeah, don't worry about any lead and blue inks or anything like that. It's all going to get locked up. As long as your soil's alive, it's all going to get locked up in medium and long chain carbonic acids. Maybe do a pH test on your fill dirt if you're doing what I was talking about earlier of lining the bottom of your raised bed with a bunch of cardboard and then putting your fill dirt on top. Maybe check the pH of your fill dirt, see if it's above 4.5 in pH. If it is, then just do some remediation before actually growing your food in there. But I don't stress about that ink at all. Becky Teddy 2105, do you have a compost thermometer that you recommend? Yes, Reotemp, Reotemp. That's the one I recommend. The Reotemp one is just very, very accurate, and like literally one temperature degree will determine whether it's ready to flip or if it's not ready to flip, if it's about to catch fire or if it's not about to catch fire. So you want really accurate compost thermometers, and typically the ones you find at the farm stores and everything just aren't good enough for what we're trying to do. We're trying to be very accurate with our temperature measurements and everything. Here's the temperature like ranges that you need to pay attention to when it comes to thermophilic compost, right? Once it hits 131 degrees, that's when you start keeping track of the time, right? So for 131 to 145, you're going to need to let it sit for 3 days in that temperature range, and then you're going to flip your pile. Because that's how long it takes at that temperature to kill the weed seeds and kill the pathogens, right? That's what allows you to be a little bit dirty with your ingredients. Now, between 145 and 155 degrees, 2 days, and then you flip. 155 to 165, 1 day, and then you flip. Anything above 165, you immediately flip. 171, compost fire. So that's why you need like a very, very accurate compost thermometer that you can also calibrate, right? So whenever you get your compost thermometer, always check the tip, put the tip up against an ice cube, should be at freezing temperature. And then take your tip and then put it up against boiling, like in some boiling water, should be at boiling temperature. And if it's not, then the Reotemp 4-foot stainless steel compost thermometer has like a little screw on the back where you can adjust and calibrate it and everything. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, Chris said people probably haven't heard of your Dash channel because of all of his BS strikes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Dad also doesn't censor himself too well either, so he gets strikes pretty consistently. Question: will this live be available on YouTube? Yeah. I'm leaving it up. I'm not getting into any weeds or anything like that. I mean, like conspiracy weeds or just censorship weeds or anything like that. So yes, this will be available for like you will be able to go back and watch this if you would like. Duh says my sister worked at Walmart and was told not to touch the blue ink on the boxes because it contains lead. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. What is next? Search how to grow sprouts in a jar for chicken feed, especially sunflower seeds. Yeah, so sprouts, you can totally grow sprouts for chicken feed and everything. I'm looking for a little bit more of a hands-off approach. So I'm looking to like scatter seeds, let it grow, and bring my chickens as I'm rotating them, bring them to that feed. Or if I'm, whatever your application is, I'm looking for a little bit more hands-off. Coonies are great. I have been on 2-acre farm in Western Tennessee for almost 4 years and have used Greg Judy's advice on rotational grazing for my pastures. And my coonies are belly deep in Kentucky 31 fescue. That's awesome. Amy B, question: how is soil savers permanent? Why do extremophile bacteria persist in non-native environments? Because extremophiles are just some straight up gangsters, and they only pop up when there's trouble around. It's like it's like Batman for the soil. They're just sitting in their little cave, just sleeping, hibernating, and then some dioxins show up, and then they're like, "All right, let me put on my utility belt and go to work." It's permanent. Like the microbes aren't going to go away. Like these are ideal soil conditions, right? So the organisms are going to stay there. They're going to reproduce. And they're going to continue doing their job as long as I don't do anything to interfere with that, creating like anaerobic conditions or anything like that. Like you have soil biology out in your soil right now. It's permanently there until you do something to kill it off, either create compaction or anaerobic conditions. Also, a bunch of the biocides create both compaction and anaerobic conditions. Tilling creates compaction, which then creates anaerobic conditions. Repeated tilling. Tilling once and then getting roots established, nothing wrong with it at all. Sometimes we got to shape the earth. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But the repeated year after year after year tilling just makes a super compacted layer. So if you like till, let's say, 3 inches deep, your fourth inch is going to be super compacted. Next is, and then extremophiles persist in non-native environments. They just don't. I mean, their native home is like on the rims of volcanoes and super arid environments and things like that. So I wouldn't stress too much about it. They just very, very resilient. Calvin Collins 9182. Well, not a question, but I want to thank you sincerely. You are the one that introduced me to soil biology and the soil wide web. Since then, I have become a huge soil nerd. So thank you. Well, thank you, dude. I'm glad you're going that route, because I'm telling you, once you take like a half step towards nature, it's going to take 10 steps towards you. It's going to start helping you try to do things, and it's going to start like filling in the gaps as you're learning the process and everything. So, y'all, everything else falls in line once you start focusing on the biology. Like everything on your farm, homestead, garden, whatever it is, all of it is dependent on your soil biology. The quality of your food, the nutrient density of your food is dependent upon your soil biology. Your health of your animals is dependent upon soil biology. Whether or not you get a good crop on your fruit trees is all dependent upon soil biology. Pests, believe it or not, like some of your flying insects and your insect pests, your diseases, your blights, all of that is dependent on whether or not the soil biology is at the appropriate levels and present. For example, I've given this example multiple times, but Dr. Elaine Ingham, the late Dr. Elaine Ingham, during her soil food web course that I was taking, she's talking about this one farm called ZZ Farm in South Africa, right? And they produce tomatoes. And what the problem that they had was like only a single digit percentage of the tomatoes they were producing were grade A tomatoes, which means good enough to sell as a whole tomato, right? So everything else had to go through processing, get turned into paste, sauce, chopped, diced tomatoes, things like that, like value added products. Everything else had to turn. And then also they would have to break new ground every single year and let what they previously used that past year go fallow for 7 years before they could even use it again. So they're in this constant process of acquiring more and more land just to keep up with production and be able to grow, good tomatoes. So they adopted the soil biology route. And then that year that they adopted it, they went from having single digits grade A tomatoes and having to buy land each year and move and, break in new ground each year, to then they flipped the ratio of now having like 90 some percent grade A tomatoes and being able to replant in the same year in the same section over and over and over again and have fantastic production just using the soil biology route. So it's definitely the way to go. Sorry, y'all, I had to clear my sinuses. Let's see what else is here. Remember to leave your questions in all caps if you could, please, just so I can easily see it. Um, this is from Duh1723. Will my years old moringa seeds sprout? As long as you had proper, as long as you kept them correctly, like as long as you stored them correctly in like cool, dry conditions away from the sun, yeah, you should be perfectly fine. Oh, I saw. Oh, yeah, coonies are great. I'm in Jackson, Tennessee. I like Jackson, Tennessee. It's like far enough to from Memphis to still be awesome. Yeah, Jackson, Tennessee is awesome. I like Jackson. I do want to move a little bit further east though. I do. I want a little bit more terrain than what Jackson offers. Let's go on down, see what else there is. This was from Duh1723. Do dwarf trees fruit faster? If so, can you name a few? Um, Dwarf trees, they might be maybe a year faster, maybe a year faster. Most fruit trees you can like generally guess it's going to be 2 to 4 years before you start getting fruit off those trees. Or 2 to 4 years before you should start getting fruit off those trees. Because you want like any, so if I planted a brand new fruit tree this year and then I notice it's putting fruit on this year, I'm going to pluck that fruit off because I want it to focus on growing the tree, not growing the fruit. Um, but yeah, they might be a little bit faster. But keep in mind, like the dwarf size, the dwarf, semi-dwarf, or full size is all dependent on the rootstock again. So you can adjust the size of your tree just based on which rootstock you pick. But I like dwarf. I like semi-dwarf. Rarely do I pick full size, just because the extra effort it requires to harvest the entirety of the tree once it puts on fruit. When yeah, semi-dwarf and dwarf, I can just grab at most an orchard ladder and still harvest all of the fruit. That's what I like to do. Um, do. Let's look at what. Don't forget about those who cry on demand for clicks. Mountainside with Ken and Amy. Y'all trying to start some stuff. I see you guys. Okay. Sakina Abdul Malik. What can I do to get rid of June bugs? Oh, I've never had that question before. Um I don't know how to do it necessarily, but I can tell you the thought process that I would use in order to find out how to get rid of June bugs. I would find out what June bugs like. I would find out what are the predators of June bugs, and I would find out what June bugs don't like. And then once I have those three questions answered, then I can go about building a plan to getting rid of June bugs. I don't know if June bugs have any natural predators, really. I know they like light. That's for doggone sure. Maybe put a bug zapper next to your light sources and just collect them and then maybe crush them up and feed them to your chickens if you have any chickens. I need a drink. That's what's going on. All right. This one's from Taylor Watkins, 8465. What's the best way to fill tall raised beds like 2 to 3 feet, 2 to 3 feet tall? I was going to do bottom half wood chips and pure compost, top half made from leaves, green grass clippings. I was told that wouldn't drain well. Yeah, definitely don't do that recipe. So if they're 2 to 3 feet tall, I actually did a video on this. I think it was in January, but it was how to fill raised beds. It's one of my more popular videos right now, especially now. Everybody's getting into spring. Everybody's kind of wondering about it right now. But what I would do is I would broad fork the area first and then put my raised bed in place. And then do 2 to 3 layers minimum of saturated cardboard. Pull the tape off and everything. You can do more layers if you want to as well. You don't have to stop at that, but minimum I would do 2 to 3 layers, and then I would fill 80 to 95% of that bed with the cheapest fill dirt I can find. The only thing I'm kind of like vetting for is making sure there's no like head size boulders in that fill dirt. But I don't care how crappy it is. Here's a little secret. All the soil you buy from landscape mulch yards, bagged soil, whoever it is, I've tested it all underneath the microscope, and all of it is garbage. But we're going to be able to fix that. So fill it with the cheapest fill dirt you can find. It's not going to be any different than any of the premium raised bed soils or anything like that. It's all garbage. It's all of it is garbage. It's not worth the trip to even go pick it up. So get the cheapest fill dirt you can find, fill 85 to 90% of your raised bed with that, and then top the remaining height with homemade, really good compost. And what's going to happen is that as you water, as it rains and everything like that, the compost is going to leach. And then also do your mulch and or cover crop over the top of that. Don't leave the soil naked. But as it rains or as you water, that those microbes are going to leach down into that fill dirt. and then they're going to inoculate that filter, and then you're going to get good, well draining crumb structure soil just from that. But get the cheapest possible filter you can find. And there's more detail in that YouTube video that I did talking about how to fill raised beds. Let's go on to the next one. Dang it, it shot me down again. This is so freaking annoying. Um, Okay. Bob Wells Nursery is in Mineola, Texas. Yeah, yeah, Bob Wells Nursery. They don't sell. I actually did a homestead meetup there a few times when I first started this channel. Did it with the Texas boys. Bob Wells Nursery does not sell bare root, I don't think. They sell all potted trees. Another reason I just don't buy potted trees is they're going to be like 3 to 4 times more expensive than the bare root. But my bare root is going to outcompete that potted tree in a year. If I have a 5-year-old potted tree and I compare it to a 1-year-old bare root tree, my 1-year-old bare root tree will outcompete that 5-year-old potted tree and be less than a quarter of the price, right? I can buy bare root trees anywhere from like 10 to 20 bucks. Potted trees, they're only 10 to 20 bucks at the end of the year sale or at the end of the growing season sale, right? And now the only time I buy potted trees is if they're heavily discounted. Like if you wait around like Lowe's or Walmart and stuff like that, they'll have like in the middle of summer, they'll have like $5 potted trees. That's when I buy potted trees. Other than that, it's bare root only. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. And just remember, guys, if you could leave your questions in all caps just so I don't miss it. Somebody mentioned, oh yeah, Zegly said a great AI tool is Brighteon.ai. You get no BS info and it's not tracked. Yeah, Brighteon AI is like a good, if you have questions about like alternative modes of healing, go to Brighteon.ai because it'll actually give you legitimate information. Yeah, Brighteon.ai is like my go-to if I'm trying to find information. Russell Homestead, I attend your composting workshops last year at KSL. After composting, I was able to soil drench my raised beds with compost extract 5 times before winter. Soil is tremendously better already. Amen. That's awesome, dude. And dude, that's fantastic. I'm so glad. Deanne Beller too. What do you recommend to keep squirrels and cats out of freshly seeded or transplanted raised beds? So squirrels, go with that bone sauce that I talked about earlier in the live stream. My dad's bone sauce. You can find it over at permapasturesfarm.com. As far as cats, man, BB gun. I don't really know how to keep cats out of it because that bone sauce really it doesn't work on like carnivores for the most part. But it works on like some omnivores and herbivores really. But as far as like cats go, I don't know. But you really do want to keep them out of your garden anyway, just because you start getting some weird prionic symptoms and stuff like that whenever you start eating. Um, produce from basically the cats are going to treat that garden bed as like a litter box, and that is no bueno. So I would definitely excommunicate those cats as expeditiously as possible. Um, Senshi, I have spread wood chips to try and build soil in my garden. I am making my own compost now and have some good soil savers. Can I water all of that over the wood chips or should I pull them back first? No, water it all in the wood chips because the wood chips are going to help. They're going to soak up some of those organisms and be an immediate food source for some of those organisms that have the ability to produce complex enough enzymes to break that stuff down. Yeah, but don't worry about moving your wood chips out of the way. It's going to be fantastic. Calvin Collins 9182 June bugs. So I have heard if you collect a bunch and put them in water and let biology decompose them, take a TBS full and add to 1 liter of water and spray around the garden specific bacteria. Okay, so basically let them decompose in a bucket and a tablespoon. Take a tablespoonful and add 1 liter of water and then spray it around your garden, and apparently that keeps them away. Huh. Janine Little 7654. Difference between Russian comfrey and true comfrey. Where to plant each. So true comfrey or like the native comfrey to North America, I would plant wherever you're fine with it spreading, right? And then Russian comfrey, it doesn't spread by seed. And the biggest difference comes to like palatability and then allantonin levels. So the allantonin levels are going to be a lot higher on your Russian comfrey, and it's going to be way more palatable to yourself and your animals. Now, if you Google, can you eat comfrey, you're going to hit a whole lot of no's. But keep in mind, when they did the studies to find out if comfrey was toxic, it was funded by the Rockefellers. And at the same time, the Rockefellers just figured out how to synthesize allantonin. So keep that in mind. Um, yeah. And this is one of those things that I got to be careful with, YouTube guidelines and everything. What I can say is, though, I eat comfrey. I use comfrey topically, and I give it to all of my animals, and I have no liver issues at all. But that's just for myself. Consult. What's the appropriate thing to say? Um, huh. Consult your bought and paid for medical practitioner. No, that's not it. Yeah, something along those lines. Consult your medical professional for information on that. But I eat it, no issues at all. And that's going to be the biggest difference is that, especially if you're feeding it to animals, your native comfrey is going to be a lot more bitter to your animals. Whereas the Russian comfrey, like the sheep, the chickens, the cows, the pigs, none of them can get enough of it. Once they like taste a little bit of it and they recognize that, okay, this is edible, once they make that, they cross that bridge, then they're going to go crazy over it. I will be getting off here before too long because I do got to take Milk Boy down to the sheep so he can do his livestock guardian duties. And I got to do it before it gets dark because that boy, that dog, he's a Great Pyrenees and he's massive and he acts like he's a tiny little baby dog and he will pull me down the mountain and I need sunlight to make sure I don't break a ankle or something like that. Um, What else? Eagle lovers, Texas. Are pill bugs bad for your garden? I think you're talking about like roly polies. No, they're like a micro arthropod, and they're heavily involved in the nutrient cycling within your garden. So I like them. I think they're cool. And also the little kid in me just always still like collects them and rolls them around in my hand and everything like that. Do 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 do. Watermelon lover H4. I heard you reply about raised beds and wanted to ask, will red dirt work? Like if it's clay type, that seems to be the only thing people sell around me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I live in Texas. I live in an area that has Play-Doh type clay. Like it's straight up Play-Doh. They export it because of its high compaction abilities, right? And I was able to turn that into like perfect, loose, nice, well structured grain structure, crumb structure in the soil. So yeah, it doesn't matter what type of the only time it would become kind of an issue is if it's straight up sand. And again, the solution, I mentioned this at the beginning of the live stream, the solution to super sandy soils is biochar. Because the issue with sandy soils is that the microbes wash through before they have the opportunity to glue themselves to the sand and start breaking that down. That's where biochar comes in handy. It doesn't flow through and it gives a home for the microbes that they can actually attach themselves to quickly, and then they can start breaking down the sands. So yeah, that should work. When you do permaculture consultations, do you help decide where to place house on half-acre lot of raw land covered in mesquite trees? Alyssa Rodman. Yes, I do. In fact, I mean, I've done permaculture consultations before property was even bought. Like I'll help you kind of decide, like if you have an option of like 5 properties and you're trying to decide which one would be best, I'll look at the listing if it's within close distance or if I'm on the road or anything like that. If I have the opportunity to look at the property, I'll do that. But yeah, I'll totally help you decide like the house location. That's within permaculture. There are some house locations that on a particular piece of property that are just better than others. Now, one thing that I've noticed, because the leaves are down in the mountains here in North Carolina, I was driving to T for Mountain Readiness. I was driving over to his house. He's about 2.5 hours from my parents here in North Carolina. And as you're driving through the mountains, the leaves are gone and everything, and you're able to see how many properties are on the very peak or ridge lines and stuff like that. And you get an awesome view, but it's awfully cold up there. You get exposed to all the wind, all the elements, all the stuff up there on the ridge line, and you have no protection either way. But that's just one example of like bad house location. Really cool house location, but not energy efficient house location. But yes, I do help with deciding where to put the property. And then also, it's not just like the best via the permaculture route, but also going to be like cost effective too. Like you might have a couple options on your property to put your house, but one of like the deal breaker might be which one is the most cost effective, because remember you got to run utilities to that, and there's a big price difference, especially now with copper prices or even aluminum prices. There's a big difference between 100 feet of service cable versus 300 feet of service cable and then, yeah, it can get costly. um let's go on to the next one. Do, 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 do. Commodity Bear Actual. When I scatter mulch the future garden area, is there a preference in type of wood mulch? So when I scatter mulch, I always use some sort of lightweight mulch like straw. You that being said, you could use wood mulch as well. I don't have a preference. I try to go if I'm buying wood chips, then I buy triple ground hardwood mulch. You can get double ground hardwood mulch, but I know it's been aged, and I know it's going to be relatively small pieces. Like I'm not going to get any big stringy pieces of mulch or anything like that. So yeah, triple ground hardwood mulch. It's also going to be one of the more expensive mulches, so keep that in mind. Stay away from any dyed mulches. That is just that's just that just hurts your soul seeing dyed mulches, especially red dyed mulches. Like I have to resist the urge of burning down the building that I see red dyed mulches on. It just bothers me. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but it does. Yeah, stay away from dyed mulches. Go for the hardwood, triple ground or double ground hardwood mulches. And then you should be good. You could even do pine shavings if you wanted to. That would work. I would do the fine pine shavings. Like if you go to Tractor Supply, you have the regular pine shavings or the fine pine shavings. I would go with the fine ones. Yeah. So hopefully that helps. Martha Sunquist 5761. Wow, one of the longest lives. Thank you, but gotta go run. Oh, but gotta run. Yeah, yeah, no problem. Like I'm just kind of killing time before I have to go pick up my parents from the airport. It's gonna be like 10:30 before I pick them up. Now I do have to. All right, I still got sunlight, so we can still keep going. I do have to put Milk Boy down. That's going to be the not down, down to the sheep. I'm on top of a mountain. I got to bring him down to the sheep, not put him down. And that's going to be like the kind of cutoff point. But we still got plenty of sunlight. I can still see pretty doggone well. Um, let's look. Oh, thank you so much. William, great live. Thank you for staying on for over 2 hours. Thank you so much. It doesn't even feel like it's been 2 hours, honestly. It feels like I just started and I'm still trying to get in the rhythm of things. But the Phoebe, we had 2 oak stumps ground and still have lots of chips mixed with the dirt, about 50%. Is it possible to fix this with some type of clover, or will it even grow on that at all? So you have 2 oak stumps ground and still have a lot of wood chips mixed with the dirt, about 50%. Yeah, you're gonna be fine. Yeah, just get like, yeah, stuff will still grow. I would just try to focus on getting some sort of cover crop down. Could be clover, it could be something a little bit more vigorous, a little bit taller if you wanted to. It all depends. We are going into warmer months, and keep in mind, clover. I don't know where you live, but keep in mind, like clover, most clovers don't do too well in extreme heats. Like I live in Texas. Clover is almost most of it, except for sometimes red and crimson, are gonna die in those extreme heats. Another thing you could do, like going into warm weather, you could do a combination of buckwheat and cowpea, and that's going to do a fantastic job of like feeding your soil and everything. Janine Little 7654, thank you for this live. Have you ever fed chickens azola, moringa, or duckweed? I fed all three, and they love it. Azola and duckweed, fantastic. Moringa, fantastic. They love, and keep in mind, every part of a moringa tree is edible. So yeah, they absolutely love it. Once the whole issue is getting them to recognize, excuse me, getting them to recognize that it is food. Once you cross that barrier, they're going to flock to it every single time. Now, one thing you could do to make them recognize it a little bit sooner is mix it in. I've always been able to get chickens to eat what I want them to eat once I mix it with cooked rice. Like something like, I don't know, primal about chickens and cooked rice. I think what it is that the cooked rice looks sort of like grubs or maggots. And I've been able to get chickens on feed not off of chick feed faster and onto compost using rice. A lot of things. So maybe your first time out, just mix in a little bit of cooked rice with it, and then they're going to eat some of it just by eating some of the cooked rice, and then you're going to be perfectly fine. But yeah, there's a little hack for you. If you want to get your chickens to eat something and they're just not eating something, combine it with some cooked rice, and then they will definitely give it a shot. Um, this is from Eduardo Torres 6108. Question: if there's a chemical spill, your soil, like how to properly remove or save the soil. So I'm guessing if you have a chemical spill on your soil, how do you remove the toxins? Soil biology, compost extract, homemade compost extract, and soil saviors. There's organisms within that soil saviors product that specialize in just breaking down toxins, and that's it. Like they go dormant when they're not present, and then they become active when they are present. Russell Homestead. Since I had soil drenched my garden beds before winter, should I make a biochar extract and pour them on now as well? Yeah, I mean it's never gonna hurt. Um, yeah, you could totally do that. Yeah, just make sure you inoculate that biochar with the biology first. So don't do just biochar suspended in water. Do biochar suspended in compost extract, and then you'll be good to go. Taylor Watkins 8465. I live in Wilkes County, North Carolina, just the foothills of Boone, North Carolina. If you know where that is, yeah, I drove through Boone on Sunday. Very very pretty area. Grandfather Mountain. I remember thinking like, I wonder why they call it Grandfather Mountain. And then I was headed back from T's house and I saw it at the perfect angle. And I was like, oh, that's why they call it Grandfather Mountain. Because it looks like the grandfather's just laying back on his back and you can kind of see the silhouette of the face and everything. It's pretty cool. Spring Flower Darks 2137. Will you be at KSL this year? Absolutely. Shoot, you think Shelly's gonna let me not show up? Yeah, I'm definitely going to KSL. Lita 84. Do you live close to Decatur, Texas? Would love to have you come and visit for a review. Off the top of my head, I live in DeKalb, Texas. You might know where that is. I'm not entirely sure where Decatur is. I'm not a Texas native. But that being said, on the topics of like visiting properties, I'm down to go to any property anywhere. Like there's no limitations to what properties I'll go to. I'll even go to war zones, depending on which war it is. Yeah, wherever you're growing food, I'll come. So you don't have to be close to me. I don't have to be in town. Yeah, it's all good. Um, I just saw something about Jason and Shelly. Where did it go? Oh, yeah, Coonies are great. I heard Jason and Shelly mention that William is going to be at KSL. Yeah, like I said, you think Shelly or Jason's going to let me not come? Yeah, Shelly's going to go tell Jason to come pick me up if I don't show up to the festival. And then Jason's going to bring some of his army buddies to hog tie me. Amy B5339. Question: if I have had pre-ground biochar in bags that got all the rain and snow, is that enough inoculation before putting on gardens after grinding? No, it's not. So inoculating biochar doesn't mean just like letting it soak in the water. You want it to soak in some sort of biology. Like if you were to look it up on YouTube, you'd see a lot of people combining their biochar in like piles of grass and things like that. What I do is I just incorporate it into my compost. I either add it after in the compost pile after I've done all my flips, or I'll add it to my compost extract as I'm making the extract. But yeah, that's how I do it. Janine Little 7654, going to start chicken tractor on steroids. What do you recommend feeding them feeding them first week? So Janine, if you could comment what kind of chickens you're doing. Are they like brand new babies? Are they seasoned layers, or are you doing a batch of broilers? But first week, what I do with the chicken tractor on steroids is I feed them everything but chicken. All of the garden waste, all the food scraps, all of it goes into that first week compost bin. And I feed them anything. If it ain't chicken, it's going in there because I don't really care if they eat it or not. Even if it's something that might be toxic to them, they know not to eat it as long as they have available food. They're never going to eat what's toxic to them. The reason I do that is because I know if they don't eat it, whatever they don't eat is going to get turned into compost. So just because it might not be beneficial to them, it still could be beneficial. But yeah, if you could tell me, I can kind of direct you a little bit better if you tell me what kind of 50 broilers. Okay, so do the rice trick. with the chicken tractor on steroids, just so you can get them interested on those piles as much as possible. Now, if they're so 50 broilers, I'm assuming you have them as chicks right now, 2 weeks on chick feed, and then you're trying to transition them in. Definitely incorporate that rice just so you can get them. And then you're also going to need to make some ramps for them to get into that first week compost cage. So, but yeah, definitely incorporate a little bit of cooked rice in there. And you might do that for a couple of days. It doesn't need to be much rice. It's just enough for them to recognize, like, oh, okay, this is where I go to get feed. And then as you get more and more piles of compost, maybe just yeah, I've never had to show them, hey, there's microbes in this compost. They've always just done it. Oh, Amy, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Amy B. I've never had to like show them, hey, there's good like biota in these compost piles, as though they've always kind of figured it out themselves. But if you have trouble with them scratching any particular pile, just put a little bit of cooked rice on any of those piles. Now, if you really want to, because you are doing broilers, I would team up with some sort of either bakery, restaurant, whatever it may be, food bank, elementary school, and I would just dumpster dive. Screw asking, because then you're leaving it up to champs. I just dumpster dive every time I've ever dumpster dive and got caught, and like pulling bags of food out of the dumpster. I've always told them, hey, it's getting turned into compost, and without a doubt, every single time they've always thought it was cool. They're like, oh, that's neat, and then they just let me be. But yeah, dumpster dive, get those food wastes. I think Dad was actually wanting to do like a webinar on specifically how to source free feed from these, like the waste streams of these other food producers and everything. But try to team up with a food producer and yeah, just collect their waste streams. And you don't, by team up, I mean you don't have to go talk to anybody. Just dumpster dive. Do it boldly. Do it boldly. No, what are they gonna do? What are they going to do? It's already been established in California that if it's in the dumpster on the street, it's free game basically. So like they can't do anything about it. Now, if you tell them you're feeding it to your chickens, they will say no every single time. So don't tell them you're feeding it to your chickens. Tell them you're making compost with it, because that's the truth. You are making compost with it. Even after they eat it and then they poop, it's getting turned into compost. So yeah, always tell them you're making compost with it. Do 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 do. Going to start a chicken tractor. Okay, Jay Carroll. Question: what would be the most cost-effective way to create a massive amount of biochar? 100 plus acres, southeast North Carolina, sandy loam to improve. 35 miles west of Wilmington, North Carolina. The most, I don't know necessarily the most cost. I mean, it's not like it costs a lot of money to make biochar. But what I do is like a very simple method. Like if I'm trying to do it on a larger scale, what I'll do is get like a 55-gallon drum, lay it on its side, and then poke 3 holes on the bottom, and then build up a big bonfire around that barrel, and then burn it. And then it's always worked out for me there. There's a lot of other people that do it different ways. Everybody claims they got the best way. Whatever way you do it is the best way. That's how I kind of view it. I'm not like, yeah, every time I do a biochar video, there's always somebody that's like just dogging me in the comments, like you need to do it this way because this way is better. I don't make it frequently enough to make it like super efficient. I think the way I do it is still fairly efficient. Oh, and if I didn't clarify, in the barrel, you're gonna pack it tight with a bunch of wood. Smaller the pieces of wood, the less time it's gonna take to it's a process called destructive pyrolysis. The less time it's going to take to reduce it to a carbon structure. Next one is from Mountainside with Ken and Amy. You should come visit before you leave town. I am down. I do have consultations for the rest of this week, so I might not be able to do it on this visit. But for mountain readiness, I'd totally be down to come visit. Yeah. Let me know. I'll get your number from Mom and Dad. I know you're friends with them and everything, but yeah, during mountain readiness, I'd totally be down to come visit you guys. I don't think I'll have the time to do it this trip, just because I will be doing consultations up until we leave. This is for Eagle Lovers, Texas. Picture this: decades old barnyard. Last year spread wood chips from the property on the area for garden. What's my next step? Compost. Yeah, I would make compost, and then start making extracts, and then just applying it to the wood chips. And that's really it. That's what I would do. Uh, no animals on it for decades. Okay, so that could be a good or a bad thing. Bad side is that they're not pooping on there, not adding fertility. Good thing they're not creating compaction. But yeah, make some compost. You only need 1 cubic yard. Remember, it's not some daunting task. You only need 1 cubic yard. There's a bunch of different methods to make it. Whatever method you pick, just make sure it's a hot compost method. Zegly, I got to put the chicks to bed off for a while. Live stream pasture raised pimp. Hopefully, I didn't upset anyone. If so, take my unhappy comment with a grain of salt. God bless from Tennessee. Man, you can't get mad at Zegly. You can't get mad. Um, oh, and J. Carroll said, additional note, only have pine trees on the property. Okay. Oh, Amy, what did you say? Oh, thank you so much, Amy B. That is awesome. Thank you for the super chat. Coonies are great. Can you put charcoal in the chicken house to inoculate it? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You could. You could totally add it to like the bedding and get it inoculated that way. The main goal with it is to get it inoculated with some sort of microbial activity, so that way it's not robbing it from your soil. And if there's any bad microbes in it, for example, it can get replaced with good ones as well. Also, another way to inoculate biochar is just feed it to your animals. Most animals will eat the charcoal. It's super high in minerals, super high in vitamins, and then also a good like little, gentle detox and everything. So that's a good way to inoculate it. But yeah, you can use it in the animal bedding as well. I was under the impression that charcoal only becomes biochar if it's been inoculated with biological organisms. Absolutely. Taylor Watkins, I have a store near me called Tyson Chicken Store that sells chicken because the Tyson store was made in my town, and every week I get the cardboard for free. Awesome. I'm assuming that's not the same Tyson as like Tyson the chicken brand. Y'all, you couldn't pay me to eat Tyson chicken for a bunch of reasons that I'm not entirely sure I can talk about on live stream, but screw it, we'll try. All right, so anybody remember Hillary Clinton saying, "Yeah, I'll sacrifice a chicken to Moloch"? This was a couple years ago, right? Okay, so there's a red room in each Tyson processing facility. There's this red room where as the chickens are on the line, they're going through and they're getting killed. They use like electricity to kill the chickens, right? If the chicken survives, then they bring it to the red room. And there's been a lot of like you know production workers and everything that have reported like, chicken gets brought to the red room. I never see the red room again. And all these men are going in there and like with suits and stuff like that. And they stay in that red room for a little bit and they come back out. And it's always been weird. They always view it as like weird. Every report of this has always been this like eerie. It's odd. Like, something up is up, but you don't know really what's up. Um, yeah. So without getting into too much detail and getting this thing taken down, yeah, you couldn't pay me to eat Tyson chicken. Um, what is the difference between charcoal and biochar? So the difference between charcoal and biochar is that for our application, right, for everything we need to pay attention to, the difference is that biochar is just inoculated charcoal, right? It's been inoculated with good biology. And if you're having trouble with like making biochar, all you need to do is just go buy some hardwood lump charcoal, and it's effectively going to do the same thing. There's still a little bit of the oils and stuff like that still there in that charcoal, but it's basically going to be the same thing. And with that, I don't have any more questions, but thank you guys so much for joining us on this live stream. I got to go take Milk Boy down to the sheep. Remember, I'll be at the Ruckus. That's going to be the next festival I'll be at. The Caleb House Ruckus. That's going to be in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And then after that, I'll be at the Mountain Readiness Festival. Y'all have got to come to the Mountain Readiness Festival. It is the best festival. And every time I'm there, I'm like, man, where is everybody? Once people find out about this, they're going to come every single time. That's linked down below. Oh, for the Mountain Readiness, you can get 5% off using the promo code PERMA5. And then KSL, I'll be there in June. And then that Heartland Festival, I'll be there, I think, in May as well. That's going to be in Ohio. So thank you guys so much. As Nancy said, stay alert, stay alive. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.